Chapter 796. Bewitching Mirror Shattering. On the 33rd floor of the tower, Yi Chen had already used up 1/5 of the skinny teenager's evil qi. This 1/5 would not go down no matter what, since the teenager's recovery speed was only a bit slower than his own. Plus, Yi Chen would not be able to keep killing him for a long time, since the latter was very powerful and had a pseudo-extreme rank evil weapon. He would still be a threat to Yi Chen. Seeing that it would be hard to kill him with other methods, Yi Chen took advantage of the fact that the skinny teenager's evil qi was at its weakest and performed his space profound sword attack, bewitching mirror shattering. As he waved out a sword attack, the space around the skinny teenager twisted. His whole body seemed to have been embedded in a mirror. Even if he turned into a hazy evil qi and tried to run around, he would not be able to get out. Boom! The mirror was shattered, and the skinny teenager was twisted into nothingness by the space power. Yi Chen squeezed his eyes. In his sight, a hazy shadow suddenly appeared. It was the skinny teenager. His body had already become so faint that it could not be seen with naked eyes. If it were not for Yi Chen's sharp eyes, he would not have been able to notice this change. The hazy shadow kept twisting and changing its shape, as if it was trying to return to its peak. But eventually it failed and disappeared into nothingness. Finally dead. As long as the evil qi was not destroyed, the body would not be destroyed. It sounded powerful indeed, but as long as the opponent's evil qi was destroyed in a short period of time, he would not have enough power to absorb the evil qi around him. Then he would be able to kill him for good. Of course, it would be very hard if the power difference was not that big. Plus, he could not be hit by the opponent's attack. Once he was hit, the evil qi would invade his body, and that would be the end of him. Yi Chen was able to kill the skinny teenager because he had the evil shattering sword and the bewitching mirror shattering. Without any of them, he would not be able to succeed. Letting out a breath, Yi Chen glanced over and noticed Lin Yuxuan's dead body not far away. Almost subconsciously, Yi Chen reached out his hand and sucked Lin Yuxuan's storage ring over, then threw it into his own storage ring. Murong Qingchen leaned over and said, "This yin qi is really hard to deal with. It's not an ordinary yin qi. It seems to have a life of its own." Yi Chen said, "Vitality can give birth to life, such as wind spirits and thunder spirits. Yin energy should also be able to give birth to yin spirits and evil spirits. In some places where yin qi gathered, it was possible for evil spirits to be born. However, the strength of these evil spirits was not high. They could only cause trouble for low-level martial artists and ordinary people. If they encountered high-level martial artists, they would be helpless. However, the evil spirits that were born in some places with extreme yin qi were especially terrifying. The thin young man and the other three were not people, nor were they corpses. They might be a life form that had fused with the evil spirits. Yi Chen could kill the skinny youngster, but the other three couldn't. Although they had evil vanquishing artifacts, they didn't have the means to erase a large amount of yin qi in one go. From this, it could be seen how terrifying Yi Chen's bewitching mirror shattering was. Thunder Devour. From a great distance, Yi Chen shot out a lightning ball towards the bulky woman who was fighting against Jin Wanchuang. There was a loud bang. A huge amount of lightning shot out, and the bulky woman's body became a lot more illusory. This was the sign of consuming too much yin qi. Yi Chen's Thunder Devour contained a powerful thunder power, which was the bane of yin qi. On the other hand, the destruction sword intent was the bane of all things. Combined with the evil vanquishing sword's evil shattering power, its effect was not any weaker than bewitching mirror shattering, and might even be stronger. The reason why he didn't use it on the skinny youngster was because that was a head-on battle, and the latter had a pseudo-extreme rank evil artifact, which made the Thunder Devour ineffective. However, it was different now. This was a sneak attack. This was a rare opportunity. Jin Wanchuang's demon, subduing pestle, turned into beams of golden light as he threw out dozens of attacks at the bulky woman. The bulky woman couldn't even run away and could only slowly erase her Yin-Chi bit by bit, eventually following the skinny youngster's footsteps. "Many thanks." Jin Wanchuang nodded at Yi Qin. With 2 dead, the remaining 2 were naturally nothing to worry about. Under the combined attacks of the 4 evil-shattering artifacts, the 4 evil beings that were neither human nor corpses turned into ashes. It was worth mentioning that after the evil treasure in the opponent's hand lost its master, cracks appeared on it. Then, with a bang, it exploded, transforming into thick Yin-Chi. The Yin-Chi converged on the treasure on the lid of the coffin in the middle of the 33rd floor and then entered it. Things are not looking good. Only then did everyone realize that the lid of the coffin in the middle had moved quite a bit to the side, and a gap had been opened up. "Open the exit quickly." The elder's hair stood on end as he held the purple gold alms bowl and turned around to attack the coffin lid. Beams of purple gold light shot out. The others did not say a word as they attacked the coffin lid with all of their power. Under the continuous attacks of the 7, the coffin lid kept on shaking, and the Yin-Chi became chaotic. Right then, the lady in yellow's expression also turned serious as she took out a huge dark blue rapier from her storage ring. The aura coming from it was not any weaker than Yi Chen's evil shattering sword or the other evil shattering artifacts. It was obviously a pseudo-extreme rank artifact. Holding the rapier in her right hand, the lady in yellow yelled and threw out an attack onto the coffin lid. Rumble. The power of this attack was even more powerful than Yi Chen's bewitching mirror shattering. The intense dark blue light was like a sun that rose up slowly, evaporating a huge amount of Yin-Chi. This is... Everyone looked at the lady in yellow with shock. She is a top half-step king warrior. Morong Ching said with a low voice. Yi Qin nodded. She has hidden it well. With a pseudo-extreme rank artifact, even normal top half-step king warriors would not be able to compete with her. A pseudo-extreme rank artifact could increase one's power exponentially. The lady in yellow was already a top half-step king warrior. With a pseudo-extreme rank artifact, she could be said to be unbeatable under the life and death realm. Unless the opponent was also a top half-step king warrior with a pseudo-extreme rank artifact, it would be impossible for them to compete with her. The coffin lid started to shake, and the gap between them was getting bigger and bigger. Right at that moment, the Yin-Chi in the 33rd floor of the mysterious Yin Tower suddenly started spinning violently. Then, like a funnel, it poured into the coffin in the middle of the floor. Such a powerful sound made everyone's body feel cold. Their protective genuine started to freeze. "Hurry!" Jin Wanchuang yelled. Boom! 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 5 different colored lights shone together. Right then, everyone did not hold back at all. Unfortunately, they were still one step too late. Boom! The lid of the coffin in the middle was blown away, and a blurry human figure appeared out of it. He reached out his right hand, grabbing the flying great weapon in the air. Yi Qin continued to attack as he looked back. He could not help but feel his heart skip a beat. It was out. This time, it was an expressionless elder in yellow robes. His clothes were torn and tattered, looking like they could be eroded at any second. He was holding a strange-looking weapon in his hand, which looked like 2 great swords that were placed side by side. There were 2 sword tips, and a cold sword light was shooting out of the 2 sword tips, freezing the surreal space. It is the mysterious Yin King. It must be her. This time we will die for sure. The elder was almost desperate, judging from the powerful evil chi coming from the elder in yellow, who was definitely a former life and death realm warrior. That strange-looking weapon must be an extreme rank great weapon as well. Either one of them would be able to kill them instantly, not to mention having both at the same time. Die! 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 Different from the 4 evil beings before, the mysterious Yin King could only say simple words. But it was these simple words that made everyone face a huge disaster. After the first word was said, all 7 of them were blown backward, pressing against the wall. Their heads were spinning, and their hearts were beating 10 times faster than normal. All of their blood was flowing backward, and their limbs were numb. After the second word was said, besides Yi Chen, Murong Qingcheng, the lady in yellow, and Erxiong, the other 3 were bleeding out of all of their orifices. Their hearts were beating like a drum. Soul sound wave attack. Yi Chen was shocked. Soul sound wave attack was to let the soul spread out in the form of sound waves. It could not only hurt the soul, but also cause a huge pressure on the body. If one of the 2 was weaker, then both of them would be killed. It did not matter if it was the death of the soul or the death of the body. Immortal, suppress. The first thing that came to Yi Chen's mind was not himself, but Morong Qingcheng. Although her body was a perfect demi-demon body, her soul would not be that powerful. It was very possible that she would be killed by her soul. At this moment of life and death, inside Yi Chen's soul ocean, the immortal sword spirit that had not made a breakthrough for a long time finally condensed into a rank for immortal sword spirit. But right then, Yi Chen did not know about the breakthrough at all. He only knew that he had to push his immortal sword spirit with all of his power and release the eternal immortal sword intent to protect Morong Qingcheng. The third word of death had finally arrived. Boom! 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 Jean Wanshuang, the elder, and the cold-looking teenagers' heads exploded. Blood sprang out everywhere. This was the result of their soul shattering and their Zhan Yuan going out of control, rushing around inside their bodies crazily. Pooh! Although the lady in yellow was a top half-step king warrior, and her soul membrane was extremely powerful, it was still not enough to block out the mysterious Yin King's soul sound wave attack. She puked out a mouthful of blood, her face extremely pale. On the other hand, Murong Qingcheng had Yi Chen's immortal sword intent to protect her, so her soul would not shatter. But this soul sound wave had still gone through the immortal sword intent and landed on Murong Qingcheng's soul ocean, knocking her out. As for Yi Chen, he was also suffering bitterly. His soul power was 5 times that of normal people, but because he did not have a soul membrane, the soul sound wave directly rushed into his sea of soul, sweeping around crazily and creating huge waves. Sensing their master's danger, the destruction sword spirit and the immortal sword spirit both shone with a bright sword intent light, lighting up his soul ocean and clearing out the abnormal soul sound wave. Among the 7, only Erxiong did not have any problems, which was really strange. Am I going to die here? Yi Chen had finally made it through the soul sound wave. Looking at the mysterious evil king floating in the air, a bitter expression appeared on his face. The latter had only uttered the word die 3 times, and they had almost been killed. If he had attacked with a single attack, they would have been dead for sure. Boom! A sudden change occurred. The coffin lid that sealed the entrance was struck by a tremendous force and flew inward. Chapter 797. An elder in black robes, who was not tall but had an aura as deep as the ocean, walked in. The black-robed old man clearly did not expect to see a yellow-robed old man floating in the air on the 33rd floor after clearing the obstacles. The yellow-robed old man's clothes were in a weathered state. Dense yin qi wafted from his body, freezing the surrounding space. Evil Spirit King. No, he looks like an evil spirit, but not. As the demi-demon king of the demi-demon race, the elder in black had seen a lot. He could tell that this elder in yellow was not just an evil spirit. He was a life form that was even more evil than an evil spirit. Once he was exposed in the normal world, he would be attacked by the god's thunder. However, inside this mysterious Yin Tower, the destiny was blocked, and he could not sense his existence. Apart from the yellow-robed old man, the black-robed old man also sensed 3 other living beings. He turned his head to look, and his eyes couldn't help but brighten up. Among the 3 lucky survivors, the energy fluctuation emitted by that beautiful woman was actually the devil power. Devil power could only be cultivated by those with the perfect demonic bloodline, and there were only a handful of people with the perfect demonic bloodline. No matter how stupid he was, he knew that this woman was the one with the perfect demonic bloodline that his clansmen were talking about. He didn't expect that when he was looking for the perfect demonic bloodline, she would come to him on her own accord. It was like wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without even looking for it. Demi-Demon King. Yi Chen and the girl in yellow squinted their eyes. Only the Demi-Demon King's Jinyuan would have demon qi that could not be hidden. In other words, the demon qi was already the element of their Jinyuan. For example, the fire element Jinyuan could be called Demon Fire Element Jinyuan, which was much more powerful than normal fire element Jinyuan. This place was not good to stay for long. Yi Chen had a bad premonition. The opponent was most likely here for Morong. Right now, Morong was still in a coma, so he could only rely on himself. Carrying Morong with his left hand, Yi Chen stood up. He stared at the elder in black and moved his body. Pa! When he passed by Daer Xiong, he was knocked down to the ground by Yi Chen. It turned out that Daer Xiong's physical body was extremely powerful. Although the soul sound wave of the elder in yellow had shattered his soul, it did not cause any damage to his physical body. Although he looked normal on the outside, he was already dead. Where do you want to go? The black-clothed old man slowly stretched out his right hand and grinned. Leave this place. Yi Chen secretly gathered his vital energy, his eyes subconsciously glancing at the evil vanquishing sword in front of him. If my guess is correct, you've killed many of my demonic human clan's clansmen. Now you can't go anywhere. This will be your grave. As he spoke, the black-robed old man made a grabbing motion with his right hand. Just half a step, and Yi Chen would be able to step on the evil shattering sword. However, right then, he and Morong were both bound by an invisible power. Their feet were floating in the air, unable to move at all. The power of a demonic human king's grab had already surpassed the limit of a half-step king warrior. Without experiencing it for themselves, it would be hard to imagine how powerful a life and death realm demonic human king would be. The kind of power had already reached the level where it could do whatever it wanted. Clatter! The black-robed old man's power was very ingenious, not harming Morong at all. However, it made Yi Chen feel as if he had been coiled by a huge python. His bones creaked as if they couldn't bear the burden. The Jinyuan he had just gathered was forcibly cut off from its source, and was completely blocked. On the right side, the yellow-robed lady held her breath as she watched this scene. She was inwardly regretting that Yi Chen couldn't see through her. But how could she see through Yi Chen? The fact proved that her intuition was right. Yi Chen was far more mysterious than she had imagined. Everyone had died, and only she and Yi Chen were safe and sound. Moreover, she was the strongest half-step king warrior, while Yi Chen was only at the peak of late sea of Soul Realm. Unfortunately, such a genius was about to die, and she herself couldn't even protect herself. She could only hope that this demonic human king would be in a better mood. At the critical moment, the yellow-robed old man, mysterious Yin King, saved Yi Chen's life. Die! The mysterious Yin King sensed that the black-robed old man was not normal, so he held a strange weapon in his right hand and waved it down. That horrifying qi power seemed like it was going to cut open the surreal space inside the tower. If the black-robed old man did not let go of Yi Chen and use his full power, he might be wounded by that attack. Letting go of Yi Chen, the black-robed old man pushed out with both of his hands. Boom! The power from the mysterious Yin King was cold and evil, while the demonic Shen Yuan from the black-robed old man was aggressive and dark. With the two powers clashing together, it was like the end of the world. Yi Chen did not even need to look to know that in the middle of the 33rd floor, there was a destructive tornado coming toward him. If he did not get away from the 33rd floor in time, he would most likely be killed. Run! Without thinking, Yi Chen stepped on the evil shattering sword and performed his defensive sword spell. The pseudo-extreme rank great sword turned into a beam of light, shooting out of the 33rd floor within a second. He did not even have the time to pick up his storage ring, because any delay would cost him his life. As he flew on his sword, a layer of white cuticle appeared on his body as well, which was indeed the dragon bone defense layer. Outside of the dragon bone defense layer was his protective Zhen Yuan, which was imprinted with bronze symbols. With the two layers of defense layered together, it was his most powerful defense. Yi Chen was fast, but the lady in yellow was not slow either. At this moment, she finally revealed her identity as a demonic beast. With a twist of her body, she transformed into a giant snake that seemed to be made of yellow crystal. The thickest part of this giant yellow crystal snake was as thick as a waist, and the thinnest part was its neck, which was only as thick as a calf. On its head, there was a small yellow horn that flickered with a pure, flawless yellow light. Shoo! The yellow crystal snake that the lady in yellow had turned into was as fast as lightning as it shot out of the entrance of the 33rd floor, following closely behind Yi Chen. The destructive tornado was spreading too fast, and the whole 33rd floor was covered by it. The corpses of Jin Wanchuang and the rest had been turned into ashes within a second, and even their storage rings had been slowly eroded until nothing was left. In the next second, the destructive tornado had caught up with them through the entrance of the 33rd floor. It was like a hot knife through butter, and nothing could stop it. When Yi Chen arrived at the 31st floor, he was finally caught up by the destructive tornado. The powerful power touched his body, and Yi Chen felt like he was in the middle of an endless ocean. On top of the ocean, there were endless waves, and he could not control the direction of his flying sword at all. I have to hold on. The protective Zhen Yuan layer that had been activated along with the bronze armor started to wobble, and its color started to dim down. The bronze symbols made a couple of popping sounds before disappearing. Yi Chen held onto Morong Qingqing tightly, protecting her in front of him. Even if the destructive tornado broke through his protective Zhen Yuan layer, it would not hurt her immediately. Stumbling, Yi Chen rushed to the 30th floor with Morong Qingqing in his arms. The destructive tornado had finally weakened a lot, but what made his expression change was that another huge explosion was heard from the 33rd floor. A powerful vibration was transmitted down through the tower. Not good. Yi Chen looked extremely serious. The first wave of the destructive tornado had not disappeared yet, and if the second wave caught up, it would be impossible for him to survive. While flying on his sword, a lot of thoughts flashed through Yi Chen's mind. Too weak. I am still too weak. One life and death realm warriors battle, and the resulting tornado was already enough to kill me, and that was only because I had escaped fast enough. If I had been slower, I would have been dead already. Is this the power of life and death realm warriors? Even a tiny bit of it could kill any warrior below life and death realm. If I did not have the bronze armor and the defensive sword spell, would I still be alive? For the first time, Yi Chen truly felt the gap between him and life and death realm warriors. That kind of gap was like a chasm that could not be crossed. His protective Zhen Yuan continued to weaken, and the aftermath of the first wave of destruction storm could no longer hurt him. However, an even greater danger had arrived. The second wave of destruction storm had caught up with him. Although it had weakened a lot as time passed, once it overlapped with the aftermath of the first wave, its power would not be far off, even if it was not as strong as the previous one. You owe me a favor. A yellow light flashed once behind him, and a massive yellow crystal snake wrapped around Yi Chen. At the same time, an even more horrifying destructive tornado appeared, drowning the three of them. Yi Chen realized that the yellow light around the snake had the special effect of weakening the destructive tornado. It was like a water snake swimming against the current. Although the water was a hindrance, it was much smaller as she swam. Her speed was even faster than Yi Chen's flying sword. This, Yi Chen could feel that the woman in yellow had a special attack. The snake spoke in human language. This is my special power. I see. Thank you. I do owe you a favor. Favors were the hardest to repay, but it was also not easy to do so. Let's get out of this first. The destructive tornado was too powerful. The third, fourth, and fifth waves had already appeared. It was hard to imagine what kind of battle the two on the 33rd floor were having. Right now, they were still on the 24th floor, and there were still a lot of floors below. The destructive tornado would be able to attack all the way to the first floor of the tower. Only after getting out of the tower would they be truly safe. As soon as they arrived at the 23rd floor, Yi Chen and the woman heard a few screams. Looking over, Shi Xiaobao's group had been torn apart by the destructive tornado. Only Shi Xiaobao and the strange old man survived. The others were all dead. 22nd floor, 21st floor, 20th floor, 19th floor. The third wave of the destructive storm stacked on top of each other, keeping the destructive storm at its original power. Then came the fourth wave, the fifth wave, and the destructive storm continued to increase. Inside the mysterious Yin Tower, there seemed to be an infinite amount of light, lighting up the entire tower. The first floor. After half a cup of tea's time, 4 figures flew out, all with pale faces and bleeding from all 7 orifices. Shi Xiaobao had already returned to his golden lion form. The golden fur on his body was completely bald. After a miserable roar, he flew out. The strange old man mumbled and also left. The yellow crystal snake turned into the woman in yellow. She smiled and said, "See you later." Then she spat out a mouthful of blood and left. So close! The dragon bone defense layer on Yi Chen's body disappeared as he carried Morong Qingqing and left. After an unknown period of time, another human figure flew out. It was indeed the old man in black. Right now, he looked even worse than Yi Chen and the rest. His qi was a lot weaker, and there was a cut on his shoulder. Although the muscles inside were not damaged at all, Life and Death Realm warriors had an undying body, so it might have been cut off already. The dead mysterious Yin King is even more powerful. Damn it. The old man in black tore open the space and disappeared without a trace. Chapter 798. After the old man left, the mysterious Yin King wanted to rush out of the mysterious Yin Tower and escape. However, as soon as he stepped out, a black hole suddenly appeared in the sky above the ocean. Inside the black hole, a golden lightning pierced through the sky and landed on the mysterious Yin King's foot as if it had teleported. Pop! The mysterious evil king's entire foot was burned into ashes by the golden flame, and the fire spread towards his body. However, when it entered the mysterious Yin Tower, the golden flame died out automatically, and the mysterious evil king also gave up on leaving the mysterious Yin Tower. Above the ocean, the elder's figure appeared. He raised his head and saw the black hole slowly disappear. The expression on his face changed many times. Although the mysterious Yin Tower restricted the mysterious evil king's freedom, it also increased his battling ability. Damn, I can't believe that in one battle I lost hundreds of years of cultivation. This hundreds of years of cultivation, I will need at least a few months to recover. The elder's expression was not good. Losing a lot of cultivation. Although it wouldn't decrease his battling ability, it would affect his stamina. Most importantly, if he didn't recover the lost cultivation immediately, the longer it took, the harder it would be for him to recover. They shouldn't have gone far. Should I go after them? A look of hesitation flashed across the elder's face. Pooh! Suddenly, the elder spat out a mouthful of cold blood. The blood was gray, and once it touched the air, it made a sizzling sound. Damn! I will clear out the Yin Qi in my body first. Feeling that there was too much Yin Qi in his body, it would be a hindrance to recovering his cultivation, so the elder gave up on the idea of searching for Morong Qingqing. To him, as long as he recovered, finding a person would be a piece of cake. There was no need to make things too difficult for himself. Pop! The figure disappeared like a black bubble, and the elder disappeared without a trace. Yi Qin took Morong Qingqing with him, but didn't leave the ruins immediately. Instead, he found a very hidden building and temporarily moved in. If he went back the way he came, he would undoubtedly encounter the self-exploding fireflies. Yi Chen was not confident that he could leave this place safely with the unconscious Morong. It was better to wait for Morong to regain consciousness first. However, Yi Chen was also a little anxious. It was hard to say how long it would take for Morong Rong to recover from the soul shock. It was possible that Morong Rong could recover now, but it was also possible that she would not wake up for a long time. This depended on her luck, and it also depended on whether Morong Rong's soul was condensed or not. Spreading a blanket on the floor, Yi Chen carefully placed Morong on it. Looking at her pale and delicate face, Yi Chen sighed softly and sat cross-legged to the side. He began to regulate his breathing and heal his injuries. If it was anyone else, they would have suffered serious internal injuries from the Tiamat's wrath and would not be able to recover within 3 to 5 days. Fortunately, Yi Chen had the most basic immortal body. As long as the injuries did not affect his core, he would be able to recover in a short period of time. Half an hour later, Yi Chen slowly let out a breath of turbid qi and opened his eyes. I didn't expect this to be a blessing in disguise. The mysterious Yin King's soul sound wave greatly increased the burden on my heart, but it also stimulated the effect of the heart-nurturing grass. Originally, I would need more than a month to refine the heart-nurturing grass into my heart, but now I only need a week. I'll take this opportunity and try to break through to half-step King Realm. Even if I can't break through, I'll at least familiarize myself with it. Keeping his promise, Yi Chen began his second attempt at half-step King Warrior Realm. On the 5th day, Morong Qingqing groaned and woke up from her coma. I'm not dead. Morong Qingqing thought that she was dead for sure. Now that she had woken up, it proved that she was only unconscious. At that time, her soul was in a mess, and she thought that she was dead for sure. Turning her head, Morong Qingqing saw Yi Chen sitting cross-legged on the ground. Steam was rising from his body, and he seemed to be beside a stove. Knowing that Yi Chen was trying to break through to half-step King Realm, Morong Qingqing didn't disturb him. She crawled up from the bed and sat cross-legged on the ground. Taking a deep breath, she slowly entered a meditative state. On the 8th day, Yi Chen woke up. Huff! It's still not enough. Seems like I'll have to refine all 3 heart-nurturing grass before I can enter half-step King Realm. However, I've finally refined the first one. Beside him, Morong Qingqing sensed Yi Chen's movements and opened her eyes. Still not successful? Yi Chen said joyfully, You're awake. Yeah, it feels like a dream. Morong Qingqing leaned over. Being alive was a gift from the heavens. She couldn't bear to die. It's good that you're awake. As for breaking through to half-step King Realm, there's no rush. I'll succeed sooner or later. When Morong Qingqing hadn't woken up, Yi Chen had always felt that he couldn't enter the right state. There were too many worries. The soul was a person's foundation, and it was very troublesome. Hugging Morong, Yi Chen stood up and said, Since you're awake, let's leave this place first. This is not a good place. How is mysterious Yin King? Morong Qingqing suddenly asked. She didn't know how Yi Chen had brought her out safely. Yi Chen smiled and said, It's all thanks to your demonic human king. He fought with mysterious Yin King, and I took the opportunity to leave the 33rd floor. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for us to leave alive. As for mysterious Yin King and demonic human king, I think they're still alive. At their level, killing each other is very difficult. It's the chaotic demonic ocean's demonic human king. Morong Qingqing said in astonishment. It should be. I'll try my best to enter half-step King Realm. Otherwise, if I run into them, I won't even have the strength to fight back. Although entering half-step King Realm meant that Yi Chen couldn't be an opponent of life and death kings, he had a large amount of Zhanyuan crystals, which could allow him to increase his cultivation base to a certain extent. Once his cultivation base was enough, adding on his own tricks. It would be better than having no hope at all. Murong Ching woke up, and the two left the ruins with much more ease. Those self-exploding fireflies still couldn't do anything to her dark force field. After leaving the ruins, the two dived for a long time. Only when they were tens of thousands of li away from this place did they break out of the water. Huff! Breathing in the fresh air, the two felt as if they had seen the sun again. Let's find an uninhabited island first. Yi Chen looked around and said to Murong Ching, I feel that my cultivation base can increase again. Murong Ching nodded. Finding an island in the boundless ocean was too easy. In less than half a day, the two found a relatively safe island. After the effect of the heart-nourishing grass had been used up, Yi Chen swallowed the second one. While refining it, he comprehended the space profound while studying the bewitching mirror shattering. The two complemented each other, and studying them together brought about unimaginable benefits. As Yi Chen's first space profound sword art, bewitching mirror shattering opened a new door for Yi Chen. As he studied it more and more, Yi Chen felt that the space profound was more and more profound. Wherever one was, there was a space. Space was not a box, but a container that could hold everything. Even time itself had an inseparable connection with this container. As the intensity of the bewitching mirror shattering increased, Yi Chen faintly felt that the things he saw were different from before. Before, he was limited to the surface, but now he could already look at the essence of things. Perhaps it was a little hard to adapt to looking at the essence of things at the beginning, but once he got used to it, it would have an unimaginable effect on his future path. Break! As the sword slashed out, the seawater on the east side of the island twisted and folded, splitting into countless layers. Each layer was like a glass container. Pum! The seawater within the range of the space power was completely shattered, and waves soared into the sky. It should be about 80 to 90% done. Sheathing the evil vanquishing sword, Yi Chen let the waves wash over his body. Unknowingly, a month had passed. The second heart, nourishing grass, had been refined successfully. Compared to before, Yi Chen's heart strength was several times stronger. With his blood pumping faster, his heart was like a drum, letting out thumping sounds. This sound caused the surrounding earth to shake and dust to rise. Once, Yi Chen had dived into the sea. The sound of his heart beating had even killed a fourth-grade demonic beast. Ripples spread out in all directions with Yi Chen as the center. It was hard to imagine the extent of Yi Chen's heartbeat. However, this was not the end. Yi Chen had officially refined the third heart, nourishing grass. Once he succeeded, he would attempt to break through to half-step king realm. This time he could only succeed. Failure was not allowed. On the other side, a powerful demonic aura soared into the sky, dyeing the sky black. Black whirlwinds appeared out of nowhere and revolved around the island, fiercely blowing. Murong Ching's cultivation base had clearly increased by another level. She was getting closer and closer to a veteran half-step king. Apart from this, the soul membrane of half-step kings would also increase along with the increase in cultivation base. For example, the yellow-robed woman was the strongest half-step king. Even if she suffered the soul sound waves of mysterious Yin King, she would only suffer some injuries and not lose consciousness. This was the effect of the soul membrane. On the other hand, Yi Chen possessed a fifth-step destruction sword soul and fourth-step immortal sword soul, as well as a soul power 5 times that of ordinary people. Even if he wasn't a half-step king, he could completely resist mysterious Yin King's soul sound waves. Compared to the yellow-robed woman, once he entered half-step king realm and formed his soul membrane, it would be difficult for even life and death kings to attack him with soul power, unless it was some extremely frightening heaven-grade high-step soul attack secret art, or a heaven-grade peak soul attack secret art of annihilation. Another month passed by. Suddenly, a huge wave rose up in the sea. The huge wave took the shape of a ring and suddenly spread out. This was not the end. In the center of the ring-shaped wave, a huge water ball was suddenly born. It expanded to a size of several dozen meters before exploding violently. Water vapor filled the air. Dong, 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 dong. The intense vibrations could be heard even on the island, startling some seabirds and causing them to flutter their wings and flee in panic. 3-heart, nourishing grass actually strengthened my heart to this extent. It seems like the success rate of breaking through to half-step king realm is at least 70%. Yi Qin emerged from the sea and stood on a reef. What Yi Qin didn't know was that the main reason his heart could be strengthened to this extent was related to his undying body. The human body had a limit, and too much medicinal energy would be wasted, and the body wouldn't be able to endure it all at once. If it were someone else, refining 3-heart nourishing grass might not be as effective as refining 1-heart nourishing grass for Yi Qin. This was because Yi Qin's undying body could maximize the potential of his body, allowing him to absorb medicinal energy like a bottomless pit. Moreover, if there was any injury, the undying body would also help repair it. As long as his heart didn't explode, there wouldn't be any problem. Therefore, although the undying body seemed insignificant in many aspects, nobody knew the truth. At the very least, Yi Qin wasn't clear about it. Chapter 799. Murong Qingqing had already come out of seclusion. Her current demonic power cultivation base was much stronger than when she was in the ruins. With a slight circulation of demonic power, the sky around the island darkened and demonic wind whistled, as if they had entered a world of darkness. According to Yi Chen's estimation, Murong Qingqing's current cultivation base was almost at mid-half-step king realm, while the yellow-robed woman was clearly at high step. This was the difference between having demonic power crystals and not. With Murong Qingqing here, Yi Qin could relax and enter seclusion to break through. Inside the spacious cave, Yi Qin sat cross-legged on a stone platform with his 5 hearts facing upwards, rapidly entering a state of wholehearted cultivation. Gulp! Under the control of his consciousness, the Zhanyuan in Yi Chen's dantian slowly and powerfully revolved. Strands of Zhanyuan gushed out of his dantian and flowed into his blood vessels. Then, driven by his blood, he began to break through to half-step king realm. There were countless blood vessels in the human body. Apart from the cornea, hair, nails, teeth, and epithelium, blood vessels could be found all over the body. According to the different structures and functions of blood vessels, they were divided into arteries, veins, and capillaries. Breaking through to half-step king realm naturally didn't need to fuse all 3 types of blood vessels with Jin Yuan. He only needed to make the Zhan Yuan perfectly circulate along with the blood in the arteries. As his blood began to flow faster, Yi Chen's heartbeat became higher and higher. Every beat was like a coconut, yet also like a tightly clenched fist, extremely powerful. Thumping sounds rang out incessantly, and the air in the cave also vibrated, spreading outwards. Good. This is several times smoother than the first time. Feeling the power of his heart, Yi Qin was even more confident. Under the control of his consciousness, his blood flow once again increased, reaching an unimaginable level. However, just in case, Yi Qin still swallowed a spirit melting grass, which could allow Jin Yuan and blood to merge for a longer time. With enough spirit melting grass, he wouldn't even need heart protecting flower or heart nurturing grass to directly break through to half-step king realm. Unfortunately, spirit melting grass wasn't cabbage. Yi Qin had only found 2 of them in Four Corner City. Everything was ready. Yi Qin could feel that his breakthrough to half-step king realm was not far off. While Yi Qin was trying to break through to the half-king realm, the outside world was not calm either. It was unknown when a head the size of a castle had emerged from the raging sea. It was a giant whale. On the giant whale's head, there were 4 lake-sized eyes. 2 of the eyes were blue and flashed with electricity. The 2 eyes in the middle were scarlet, cruel, and bloodthirsty. It was a 4-eyed thunder whale at the half-step demonic king realm. It was the largest among the cetacean sea beasts. It was said that the largest four-eyed thunder whale was comparable to a city. It could swallow half a city in one bite, killing countless lives. Its huge body meant that the beast power inside its body was boundless. The moment the four-eyed thunder whale appeared, everything within hundreds of miles became strangely still. The waves froze in the air, the wind stopped spinning, and everything was frozen. Puny human, hand over all your wealth. The four-eyed thunder whale let out a thunderous sound towards Murong Chingching. Murong Chingching stood on a tall rock. She reached out her hand and brushed away the hair that had been messed up by the wind before. She said lightly, "Cut the crap. You are perfect for the experiment." With her cultivation increasing, Murong Chingcheng was just about to find someone to test it out on. The four-eyed thunder whale was a huge sea beast, so it would be a good opponent. "You are looking for death." The four-eyed thunder whale was furious. It opened its huge mouth, and a thick water column with electricity shot out, attacking at Murong Chingcheng, who was relatively small in size. Murong Chingcheng did not dare to be careless, so she reached out her right hand and blocked in front of her body. Rumble! A semicircle, black barrier appeared, protecting half of the island within. The 100-meter-thick water column crashed onto it, bringing up a huge splash. However, those arm-thick electric currents were unable to penetrate the barrier and harm Murong Chingcheng. Dark element profound sense martial art darkness sky die. The most powerful attack of sea beasts was not energy attacks, but physical attacks. The mountain-like four-eyed thunder whale jumped up. The sky was dark, and the whole island was covered in its shadow. Swoosh! Swoosh! The four-eyed thunder whale's body was surrounded by electricity as it smashed towards Murong Chingcheng. Dark Devour! Murong Chingcheng was afraid that the battle would affect Yi Qin, who was in the middle of breaking through. She quickly formed a hand seal with both of her hands. After that, she waved her right hand in the air. All of a sudden, 4 black light balls formed in a row, spinning and collapsing like 4 small black holes. As soon as the four-eyed thunder whale touched the black light balls, it immediately felt that half of the impact had disappeared. The beast power in its body flowed out like water, pouring into the black light balls. This black light ball could devour power and energy. Piss off! Her tall and slim body jumped into the air as Murong Chingcheng threw out a palm attack at the four-eyed thunder whale's forehead. That powerful demon power exploded, blowing the four-eyed thunder whale dozens of miles away. The shock wave that was brought up even tore apart the clouds in the sky. Such a rich beast power! The second her palm made contact with the four-eyed thunder whale, Murong Chingcheng could feel that its beast power had not decreased by much. Ever since she had become a half-step king warrior, her dark devour ability had increased by more than 10 times. Even a half-step king warrior would lose 1/10 of their power if they were hit by it. If they were hit consecutively, they would not even need to fight before their Zhenyuan would be completely devoured. However, the four-eyed thunder whale's beast power could be said to be endless. 4 dark devour attacks would only devour 1/100th of its beast power, which was almost negligible. Whale dance! As a half-step beast king, the four-eyed thunder whale would not only have this kind of attack. Its body shone with a bright thunder light, and hundreds of giant whales were formed from the ocean water. These whales were not even 1/100th the size of the four-eyed thunder whale, but there were a lot of them. Their bodies were covered in thunder and lightning, making cracking sounds. Hundreds of huge whales rode the wind and broke through the waves, rushing toward Murong Chingcheng and attacking her. Murong Chingcheng's expression did not change at all. The purple and black electric currents on her body moved quickly, and an invisible power field spread out with her as the center. Within a second, hundreds of giant whales were affected, under the effect of the power field. Every step the whales took would have to bear 10 times the pressure. Before they even got close to the island, they had all been shattered and turned back into ocean water. What kind of power field is this? The two eyes in the center of the four-eyed thunder whale squinted into slits. A normal force field wouldn't be this powerful. His whale dance was one of his most powerful trump cards, but he couldn't even get close to her. This woman's power was beyond his imagination. I will come again. The four-eyed thunder whale sank back into the ocean, and its towering mountain-like body disappeared. Lightly landing on a rock nearby, Morong Ching frowned slightly. Ocean beasts are usually huge, and their beast power is extremely powerful. It is not easy to kill them, unless I can break through their defense with one attack and hit their vitals. That palm attack from before had already wounded the four-eyed thunder whale, but obviously, compared to its huge body, that injury was just a small one. It did not even have the right to cause the four-eyed thunder whale any pain. Ocean beasts were called moving fortresses for a reason. Guarding the island, Morong Ching did not move, but her soul power would scan out from time to time. Inside the cave on the island, Yi Chen had already reached the critical moment. His blood was driving his Zhenyuan, completing the perfect cycle. He was only one step away, and it would be the most difficult one. Taking out the second and last spirit melting plant, Yi Chen swallowed it without any hesitation. All of a sudden, a wave of cool and sticky medicinal power seeped into his blood vessels, making the blood and Zhenyuan combine even better. There would not be any sign of separation in a short period of time. Success or failure depends on this. Yi Chen moved his mind, and his blood flow increased rapidly. His heart was reaching its limit, and a thumping sound could be heard continuously. Soon, Yi Chen's body was surrounded by a hot mist, and within the mist there was a vague red light. It was the sign of the excessive water evaporation, bringing out the qi and blood. In his inner vision state, Yi Chen could see that inside his arteries his blood and Zhenyuan had almost formed a perfect cycle. There was only a small gap left, which would decide whether or not he would be able to reach the half-step king warrior level. Let's make a breakthrough. Taking a deep breath, Yi Chen pushed his blood flow to an overloaded state. All of a sudden his heart was slightly damaged, and a lot of his blood vessels were broken. Boom! Right then, a wave of powerful Zhenyuan vibration spread out in all directions with the cave as the center. Dark clouds gathered in the sky all of a sudden, and heavy rain poured down. Lightning and thunder roared. An intense yuan qi vibrated, causing a huge storm. It was nature's reaction to the change of the environment. Ting! All of a sudden, a massive sword qi shot out into the sky, tearing apart the sky and earth. The breakthrough is successful. This sword qi. Morong Ching turned her head, a joyful expression on her face. Without a doubt, from this moment on, Yi Chen had officially entered the half-step king warrior level. However, this horrifying sword qi was a bit different, completely different from the sword qi that came from great swords. It had a unique characteristic. Morong Ching looked like she was thinking about something. Before this, Yi Chen had trained the Green Lotus Sword spell, which was a top-rank Earth realm martial art. Above that, there was actually a Heaven realm martial art, which was not something that anyone could train successfully. Although it was related to the comprehensive ability, it was not directly related. Instead, it was directly related to Zhenyuan and realm. Normally, only life and death realm warriors could create a Heaven realm martial art that was suitable for them. Of course, it would take a long time, at least dozens of years, and at most hundreds of years. Under life and death realm, even if one's comprehensive ability was extremely high, they would not be able to create a Heaven realm martial art because under life and death realm, one's Zhenyuan would not be able to support the operation of a Heaven realm martial art. However, there was an exception, and that was some top-rank Earth realm martial arts that could be upgraded. For example, the Green Lotus Sword spell was one of them, which was originally a top-rank Earth realm martial art. Once it was upgraded, it would naturally become a Heaven realm martial art. With such a huge commotion, Morong Chingching could not think of any other possibilities. Chapter 800. Morong Chingching's guess was right. When Yi Qin broke through to the half-step king warrior level, he had indeed increased his green lotus sword spell to the heaven realm. Actually, a long time ago, Yi Qin had already felt that his green lotus sword spell had been restricted, as if there was an invisible barrier stopping him from making a breakthrough. Since Battle King's experience was different from Yi Chen's, he had created his own heaven realm martial art when he reached the life and death realm. Therefore, his experience could not explain this, and Yi Chen did not think too much about it at that time. Now that he thought about it, it should be because of the special nature of his green lotus sword spell. After all, when he first got his green lotus sword spell, it was written that both the green lotus sword spell and green lotus sword arts could make breakthroughs. Later on, the green lotus sword art had evolved into a heaven realm martial art, which was also a profound sense martial art, amaranth in nature. Heaven realm martial arts are profound sense martial arts. Although heaven realm martial arts do not have much to do with profound sense, they still contain an immeasurable power like the natural law. Battle King's heaven realm martial art was the platinum sword body, which had a natural advantage in defense. Normal king warriors would not be able to hurt him at all. I wonder what kind of special effect my green lotus sword spell has. Yi Chen's body was shining with a powerful blue qi flow. It was extremely sharp, and with just a little bit of combination, it could form an indestructible sword qi. That earth-shattering sword qi just now was a beam of sword qi formed by the blue qi flow. Scatter! Yi Chen groaned as he controlled the blue qi flow to scatter. Pop! As if a blue bubble had been formed, the blue qi flow spread out with Yi Chen as the center. Looking from afar, Yi Chen seemed to be inside a massive blue qi cover. Inside the qi cover, the blue qi flow was spinning without any pattern. Condense! Yi Chen could not be more familiar with the green lotus sword spell. Therefore, even though his green lotus sword spell had reached the heaven realm, Yi Chen still vaguely knew something about it. Ding! Ding! Countless sword sounds were heard as countless blue great swords appeared inside the blue qi cover. Is this the sword artist's domain? Sword domain? Yi Chen was surprised. No, it should be the embryonic form of a sword domain. A true sword domain would have its own unique laws, and these laws would be controlled by the person who released it. Big brother, that woman is on the island ahead. Thousands of miles away, 4 figures were galloping over. These 4 figures were a 4-eyed giant whale, a double-headed serpent, a flaming giant bird, and a hook-nosed man standing on the back of the giant bird. The man's bare arms were covered with fish scales, and he had a pair of gray wings on his back. The demonic energy fluctuations emanating from him seemed to contain the attributes of wind and water. The man nodded satisfyingly and said to the huge whale, "It's hard to see a human half-step king in the deep ocean, not to mention a beautiful woman. You've done well. Once I capture that woman, I'll give you a bit more of her wealth." "Thank you, big brother." The 4-eyed whale opened its pitch-black mouth. Sea beasts in the deep sea had always lacked spirit stones to cultivate, so human experts were one of their favorite prey. "We're here." Thousands of miles were only tens of blinks of an eye for sea beasts at half-step Beast King level. Soon, the 4 beasts arrived at the island. "You're here again." Murong Chingching had already sensed their arrival. The 4-eyed whale laughed weirdly. "I said I would come back. I didn't expect you to be this arrogant, staying here and not leaving. With your power, why do you need to leave?" Purple-black electric currents moved around on the surface of her body. As Murong Chingching spoke, her dark power field spread out, covering dozens of miles. "Big brother, this woman is too arrogant. Let me teach her a lesson." The 2-headed serpent volunteered. The hook-nosed man glanced at Murong Chingching. In his memory, he had never seen a human woman who was even 60% as beautiful as her. All of a sudden, A perverted look flashed through his eyes as he held his chin and said to the serpent, "Don't hurt her." "I know what I'm doing." The serpent was not much smaller than the four-eyed whale, and in terms of length it was even longer. It coiled its body and raised its two heads up high, looking down at Morong Chingcheng. Its long red tongues flicked in and out like two 10-meter-long spears. "Surrender now, and you will not have to suffer any pain. My patience is limited." The two-headed serpent was more powerful than the four-eyed whale. It had learned from the four-eyed whale that this woman wasn't necessarily stronger than the four-eyed whale, but her force field ability was slightly more powerful, which rendered its trump card useless. The two-headed serpent wasn't afraid of any force fields. Its ability was different from the four-eyed whale's. Kill. Morong Chingcheng didn't waste any more time with the serpent. She leaped into the air and threw dozens of hand blades at the serpent. Clang, 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 clang. Although the flying sky assassination cut was only a low, rank, profound sense martial art, it was fast. Because of its carelessness, the serpent was hit by dozens of black blade lights, its scales flying everywhere. Feeling the pain, the serpent screamed. Its left head shot out a high-pressure water column toward Morong Chingcheng, while its right head shot out a black venom toward Morong Chingcheng. The high-pressure water column only relied on the impact to hurt people, but the black venom was different. Once a demonic beast reached rank 9 or 10, its venom would no longer be pure venom, but a powerful venom mixed with Zhenyuan. Not to mention the venom from a half-step beast king. Once it touched the body, it would be very troublesome. Swoosh! The wings on her back spread out as Morong Chingcheng flashed once, avoiding the high-pressure water column and the black venom, appearing in the sky. Soul-extinguishing wave. Holding a black light ball in her hand, Morong Chingcheng suddenly clenched her fist. Boom! The black light ball was shattered, and an energy wave mixed with a soul attack shot out toward the serpent. The serpent made a weird sound as its body flipped over, rolling around in the ocean. Although the soul attack contained in the soul-extinguishing wave was not enough to kill it, it had shaken its soul quite a bit. Moreover, the soul of the sea beasts had always been weaker than that of humans. This was the horrifying thing about soul attacks. Sky Demon Finger. Morong Chingcheng seized the opportunity and performed another demon's martial art. Sky Demon Finger. The black finger power was like a small black sun, attacking toward the serpent. Boom! The black and red light spread out in all directions. In that critical moment, the flaming bird shot out a red fireball, which landed on the black sun. On the back of the flaming bird, the man clapped his hands and laughed. Not bad. Not bad. Number 4 and number 2's beast power are thousands of times more powerful than yours, but they still lost to you. Your power might even be at the top of the human demi-king warriors. The sea beasts were one of the beasts. Because of their huge bodies, their beast power was unstoppable. Normally, 10 human demi-king warriors would need to fight against one demi-king level sea beast. But it was also because of their power that it was extremely hard for the sea beasts to produce demi-king warriors. The deep ocean was so huge, and the demi-king level sea beasts might not be that much more than the humans. Cut the bullshit. Let's go. Morong Chingcheng frowned slightly. The sea beasts were indeed scarier than the beasts on the land. The main reason was that they were too huge and their beast power was horrifying. Although their power and body might not be the same, the difference was still hundreds of times. Morong, let me do it. The cave on the island exploded, and Yi Chen in blue flew over, standing right next to Morong Chingcheng, looking at the 4 beasts in the distance. You are the one she is protecting, right? You have just reached demi-king warrior level. What can you do? The man observed Yi Chen carefully and realized that his Zhenyuan vibration was a lot weaker than Morong Chingcheng's, which meant that he had just reached demi-king warrior level. Sword domain. Yi Chen did not say anything. He squinted his eyes slightly and a blue light suddenly spread out from his body, covering hundreds of miles in a second. What is this? The man was already in the range of the blue light. He reached out his hand and made a grabbing gesture in the air, feeling that the blue chi flow was a bit piercing. Yi Chen smiled lightly and pushed his right hand toward the four. Shoo! 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 Without any sign, the blue chi flow condensed into countless blue great swords, each of which contained a rank 5 destruction sword intent. Perhaps their pure attacking power was not as powerful as Yi Chen's normal attacks, but with enough of them, it would still have a destructive power. Tens of thousands of blue great swords shot out, and the 4 beasts were all within the attack range. Be careful! The man did not dare to be careless, so he pushed up a layer of protective beast power. The other 3 beasts also activated their beast power to block out the incoming attacks. There were just too many blue great swords shooting out like a storm. This kind of effect was just like thousands of Sea of Souls realm warriors attacking at the same time. Without a doubt, they had suppressed the 4 beasts and then started to weaken their defense. Too scary. Back out. The aquiline-nosed man was aghast. His protective demonic energy couldn't block so many green swords. How was this a one-on-one fight? It was clearly a group fight. Tens of thousands of people ganging up on 4 people. They weren't sea beast kings, so they couldn't ignore this kind of attack. The first one to be attacked was the 4-eyed giant whale. Its body was the widest, so it was attacked the most. Almost a third of the attacks were directed at it. Pooh! Pooh! Like a piece of rotten meat, the 4-eyed giant whale was pierced by the blue great swords and turned into a pile of blood paste. The ocean water it was in had been cut into countless pieces, and it could not be healed right away. The next one to die was the double-headed snake, which was not much better than the whale. The flaming bird was rather fast. It carried the man and ran out of the sword realm. The red feathers on its body had almost all been cut off by the blue great swords. Luckily, it was at the edge of the sword realm and was able to run fast, so it was not killed right away. Do you think you can get away? Yi Chen took out his evil shattering sword and threw out a waning moon attack. That black crescent-shaped sword power made the full moon in the sky look even dimmer. It sliced through the flaming bird's body once. Swoosh! The flaming bird and the man were both dismembered within a second. Chapter 801. Murong Qingqing wasn't too surprised that Yi Chen had instantly killed the 2. Before entering Half-Step King realm, Yi Chen already had the strength of a strongest Half-Step King. Now that his cultivation base had increased by several folds, his strength had naturally reached an unfathomable level. However, Yi Chen's sword domain had broadened her horizons. She could tell that any of the blue swords within the sword domain didn't have much offensive power, only at late Sea of Soul realm. After all, the blue swords were merely sword chi, and didn't have the amplification of artifacts or profound martial skills. They only had pure killing power. However, when tens of thousands of blue swords shot out at the same time, their momentum wasn't inferior to the combined attack of thousands of late Sea of Soul realm experts. Is this the change brought about by the Green Lotus sword arts? Murong Qingqing asked. Yi Chen nodded. After the Green Lotus sword arts became a heaven-grade cultivation technique, it has many more wondrous uses. So far, I've only discovered the sword domain. Of course, a heaven-grade cultivation technique is a heaven-grade cultivation technique after all. Its Zhen Yuan recovery speed is 10 times faster than before, and the circulation speed of Zhen Yuan is also extremely fast. Cultivation techniques normally wouldn't increase one's battle power by too much, but they were extremely important. Thinking about it, one couldn't always rely on pills in a prolonged battle. If one took too many pills, their Zhen Yuan would become impure, and they wouldn't be able to circulate it. Therefore, one's Zhen Yuan recovery speed had to be impressive. At this moment, the advantage of a high-grade cultivation technique would be obvious. Secondly, during a battle, both sides would become stiff, and those with high-grade cultivation techniques could rapidly circulate Jinyuan to expel the stiffness. This was an advantage that couldn't be ignored. Lastly, the higher the grade of the cultivation technique, the faster the cultivation would be. Without any exaggeration, an ordinary half-step king who cultivated bitterly for 100 years might not be able to reach the result of Yi Chen's 10 years of bitter cultivation. The gap between a heaven-grade cultivation technique and a peak earth-grade cultivation technique couldn't be calculated with common sense. Moreover, heaven-grade cultivation techniques usually had special powers. For example, Yi Chen's sword domain. If used well, it could allow Yi Chen to ignore group attacks. If he encountered hundreds or thousands of late sea of Soul Realm experts, he would no longer need to run, as he could annihilate them all by himself. In the past, he could only retreat. Sword domain, no wonder. Murong Qingqing suddenly understood. Domain was an extremely special existence. Even among life and death kings, only a few possessed a domain. Although Yi Chen's sword domain was not a true domain and hadn't formed the power of rules, it was a great trump card in the same realm. Yi Chen had just stepped into the half-step king-warrior realm, but he still did not have the time to use Jinyuan crystals to increase his cultivation. After taking care of the 4 beasts, Yi Chen planned to spend some more time to increase his cultivation to the limit that he could control. Otherwise, all these Jinyuan crystals would be a waste. When he was at Late Sea of Soul Realm, Yi Chen had spent less than 10 Jinyuan crystals to raise his cultivation base to peak Late Sea of Soul Realm. However, after reaching Half-Step King Realm, this amount increased by 100-fold. It was not that the Jinyuan of Half-Step Kings was several hundred times thicker than that of Late Sea of Soul Realm, which would be too exaggerated. The main reason was that the Jinyuan of Half-Step Kings was even purer, to the point that it had reached a demanding level of purity. It was like gold. Even if the purity of gold was not high, it would still be valuable, and no one would be willing to throw it away. However, at Half-Step King Realm, it was like picking bones in an egg. Even the slightest flaw would be discarded. However, at this moment, no one would complain about their Jinyuan being too pure. In fact, the purer the Jinyuan, the better, because it would increase their chances of breaking through to life and death realm. After consuming 800 Jinyuan crystals, Yi Chen's cultivation base had finally reached the limit of what he could control. Any more, and he wouldn't be able to control it, and the gains would not make up for the losses. At this moment, Yi Chen's cultivation base had actually caught up to Murong Qingqing's. The gap between the two soul power and martial arts was too huge, and it couldn't be helped. At peak Late Sea of Soul Realm, I couldn't use the evil vanquishing sword's might at all, not to mention the Sky Scorpio sword. The evil vanquishing sword is a pseudo-extreme grade artifact, and it requires too much Jinyuan. Right now, if I use it with all my strength, I should be able to use it 5 times. In the mysterious Yin Pagoda, Yi Chen wielded the evil vanquishing sword, which was only a bit more powerful than the thunder disaster sword. Of course, at that time, the evil vanquishing sword's power was more important than its might. The reason why Yi Chen was able to kill the aquiline-nosed man and the giant flame bird from 100 li away was precisely because he had unleashed the full might of the evil vanquishing sword. Otherwise, at such a distance, its might would have been weakened by a lot. After all, this was different from sword domain, in which attacks would not be weakened. Raising his cultivation base to the limit of his control, it was time to leave. Instead of going to Quadrant Island, the two spent 5 days and 5 nights before arriving at another bustling island in Richlight Ocean Span, Gemstone Archipelago. Gemstone Archipelago alone couldn't compare to Quadrant Island. Added together, their total area was more than 10 times that of Quadrant Island. Gazing into the distance, the ocean seemed to be embedded with dozens of different colored gems, emitting a beautiful radiance under the sunlight. Gemstone Archipelago was named after the colors of the islands, such as Azure Island, Fiery Island, and Orange Island. The two weren't too familiar with this place, so they landed on the edge of Azure Island. As soon as the two landed, a young woman ran over. Her cultivation base was neither high nor low at early astral reaching realm. It's your first time at Gemstone Archipelago. My name is Wang Lan, and I can be your guide. If there's anything you don't know, you can ask me. The price is very cheap, only 5,000 mid-grade spirit stones. The young woman looked at Yi Qin and Morong Qingqing with some expectation. Yi Qin said, "How do you exchange mid-grade spirit stones and upper-grade spirit stones in Gemstone Archipelago?" Wang Lan honestly said, "There are many treasures in the deep sea, but few spirit stones. In Gemstone Archipelago, one upper-grade spirit stone can be exchanged for 80 mid-grade spirit stones." Oh, a very high exchange rate. Generally speaking, one upper-grade spirit stone could be exchanged for at least 50 mid-grade spirit stones. 1 to 60 to 70 was the most common, and exceeding 70 was already very high. As for 1 to 100, it would only appear in auctions. The exchange rate in the market wasn't that high. Here are 40 upper-grade spirit stones, half of the price. When we don't need you anymore, we'll give you the other half. For now, take us to a high-grade artifact exchange site. The higher the better. Morong Qingqing handed over 10 upper-grade spirit stones to Wang Lan. Many thanks. Wang Lan accepted the upper-grade spirit stones with a joyful expression. All right, take us there, Yi Qin said indifferently. This way. Wang Lan soared into the sky and brought the two toward the center of Gemstone Archipelago. Gemstone Archipelago, red islands are generally used for the trading of artifacts. Light red islands are the lowest, and generally only mid and upper-grade artifacts are traded. Fiery red islands are for upper-grade artifacts and peak upper-grade artifacts. Above the fiery red islands is the deep red islands, where you can occasionally see pseudo-extreme grade artifacts. It's the highest grade island in Gemstone Archipelago. On the way, Wang Lan explained to the two. Morong Qingqing asked, "You're saying that pseudo-extreme grade artifacts have appeared on the deep red islands?" Wang Lan nodded. Depending on the mountain, depending on the river. There are many treasures in rich light ocean span, and people often obtain some extreme grade artifacts. They can't use them themselves, and they don't feel safe keeping them on them. Therefore, they sell them and buy things that they can use for themselves. If you two are lucky, you might be able to buy a suitable artifact. However, the price here is very high, so you two better be prepared. Yi Qin faintly smiled but didn't say anything. After some conversation, Yi Qin and Morong Qingqing learned that Wang Lan was born and raised in Gemstone Archipelago. Apart from cultivating, she was a guide for others. Although astral reaching experts didn't look good, they earned a lot of spirit stones. After all, those who could come to Gemstone Archipelago were basically Sea of Soul Realm experts, and they would have tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of upper-grade spirit stones. They wouldn't haggle with you. An ordinary astral reaching expert would have a net worth of 100,000 mid-grade spirit stones at most, which would be close to 1,000 upper-grade spirit stones. Leading the way once would allow one to cultivate for a long time in peace. Of course, this kind of business wasn't easy to do. There were too many people competing with one another, so one had to rely on luck and discernment. In a short while, the three arrived at the deep red island. The largest artifact trading place on the island is the splendid exchange at the center of the island. The minimum requirement to enter is Sea of Soul Realm. Wang Lan said from the front. Arriving outside the splendid exchange, Morong Qingqing stopped and gave Wang Lan 40 upper-grade spirit stones. You wait here. When we come out later, we'll need you to be our guide. 80 upper-grade spirit stones were nothing to Morong Qingqing. She had obtained more than 100 million upper-grade spirit stones in the ruins of the mysterious Yin King, which was hard to imagine for ordinary people. All right. Wang Lan obediently waited outside. This time, she had encountered a big customer. Although she couldn't see through their cultivation bases, judging from their actions, they were at least rich late sea of soul realm experts. Entering the splendid exchange, the two were startled by the flow of people inside. There were too many sea of soul realm experts inside, numbering in the thousands. As far as the eye could see, the splendid exchange seemed to be packed with people. Heated discussions could be heard from far away. Wind Thunder Staff, upper grade artifact, 300,000 upper grade spirit stones. Smelting Fire Sword, upper grade artifact, 320,000 upper grade spirit stones. Dazzling Armor, upper grade artifact, 520,000 upper grade spirit stones. Divine Wind Boots, upper grade artifact, 480,000 upper grade spirit stones. Among the treasures being sold in the glorious bazaar, even the worst ones were top high-rank treasures. Of course, as Wanglon had said, the treasures here were indeed expensive. Ordinary high-rank treasures would not exceed 100,000 high-rank spirit stones. Although the lowest grade of the treasures here were top high-rank treasures, it was still more than 100,000 high-rank spirit stones. Fortunately, one could bargain here. You could also compare the price. The higher the price was, the better it would be for bargaining. Walking through the entire splendid exchange, the two found a staircase leading to the second floor. There were 4 Sea of Soul Realm experts guarding there. Sorry, you can't go up without late Sea of Soul Realm cultivation base. The 4 obstructed a middle-aged man with mid-Sea of Soul Realm cultivation base. I have spirit stones. The middle-aged man was unwilling. Sorry, there are rules. The guard's expression didn't change. Yi Qin and Murong Qingqing were baffled. Low cultivation base did mean low wealth. The rules of the splendid exchange were indeed strange. The two didn't stop and proceeded to the second floor. The 4 guards carefully sized up Yi Qin and Murong Qingqing and were astonished. They couldn't see through the two's cultivation base at all. There was only one explanation. The two were half-step kings. Rich Light Ocean Span had numerous half-step kings, and they were the true kings of this place. Please! The 4 opened the way. Upon arriving at the second floor, the two didn't see many people. It was quite spacious and empty. Based on a rough estimation, there were only a few hundred people here. However, the artifacts sold here were of high grade, all of them being semi-extreme grade artifacts. Moreover, the stalls were quite far apart, so there wouldn't be a crowd. Chapter 802. Although semi-extreme grade artifacts and peak upper grade artifacts didn't differ much in terms of grade, the price difference was more than 10 times, and some even reached 20 times. Even among semi-extreme grade artifacts, there was a huge difference in quality. Some rare semi-extreme grade artifacts weren't any weaker than pseudo-extreme grade artifacts, and their imitation targets were also famous extreme grade artifacts from ancient times. Murong Qingqing's goal in coming here was to find a pair of gloves that suited her. After all, compared to her cultivation and strength, her original gloves were a bit outdated. It would be fine if she fought against ordinary half-step kings, but if she encountered strongest half-step kings, it would be hard to avoid suffering some losses. Along the way, the two saw many semi-extreme grade artifacts. Blowing Snow Glove, price 3 million upper grade spirit stones. Silver Snake Blade, price 3,200,000 upper grade spirit stones. Blood Flame Spear, price 3,500,000 upper grade spirit stones. Water Moon Sky Armor, price 5 million upper grade spirit stones. In ancient times, there were many semi-extreme grade artifacts, and some of them might not even be an imitation of an extreme grade artifact. The main reason was that the grade of the materials was somewhat low, making it impossible to make an extreme grade artifact. Even inferior artifacts couldn't be made, so they became semi-extreme grade artifacts. Bone Eroding Evil Shadow, price 6 million upper grade spirit stones. After walking for a long time, the two finally found a pair of gloves that looked good. "Excuse me, can I have a look at this pair of gloves?" Murong Chingching and Yi Qin walked over. Sure. The seller was a robust, middle-aged man. His cultivation base was not low, being at the peak of late sea of Soul Realm. However, facing Yi Qin and Murong Chingcheng, who were both half-step kings, his cultivation base was not worth mentioning. He hurriedly took out the gloves and handed them over to Murong Chingcheng. Taking the gloves, Murong Chingcheng sensed the soul imprint inside. It wasn't that someone had used it before, but rather a basic precaution in the marketplace. It was to prevent some customers from saying that the items belonged to them, which would not be a pleasant thing. Imprinting a soul imprint on an artifact for sale. This way, as long as one wasn't a life and death king, they wouldn't be able to erase the soul imprint in a short period of time. Without one's own soul imprint, one wouldn't be able to bring out the artifact's full power. However, this was not a battle, but a test of the quality of the gloves. Putting on the bone-eroding evil shadow glove, Murong Chingcheng clenched her fist slightly. All of a sudden, a huge amount of black qi poured out, twisting the space slightly. The surrounding environment was reflected inside, becoming blurry. Shoo! Reaching out her hand, Murong Chingcheng's right hand was like a steel blade, leaving a light claw mark in the air. The middle-aged man held his breath. Without a doubt, Murong Chingcheng was a half-step king, and not an ordinary one at that. Although that attack just now wasn't aimed at him, he felt as if his soul was about to be pierced through. It was swift and tyrannical. Not good. It's only 2 to 3 grades higher than normal semi-extreme rank gloves. Murong Chingcheng shook her head and took off the gloves. Yi Qin laughed. No rush. I haven't finished the second floor yet. The bone-eroding evil shadow was a rare treasure for normal half-step king warriors. Unfortunately, Murong Chingcheng needed better gloves. Even if they weren't pseudo-extreme rank, they couldn't be too bad. You two don't want it? The middle-aged man took over the gloves and asked carefully. Yi Qin waved his hand, no need. Hearing him, the middle-aged man sat back down. He didn't dare to throw a tantrum in front of 2 half-step king warriors. The second floor was finished. All in all, there were a lot of good items, but none of them could enter Yi Qin and Murong Chingcheng's eyes. The two also didn't splurge to buy something they didn't need. Third floor entrance for peak late sea of Soul Realm Guard stood there, with a sign on the side that said, "Only half-step king warriors are allowed to enter." Without any obstruction, the two went up to the third floor. Slightly squinting his eyes, Yi Chan encountered so many half-step king warriors at the same place. There were at least 40 to 50 half-step king warriors on the third floor. Most of them were elders, followed by middle-aged warriors. There were only a few young warriors. There were very few treasures for sale on the third floor. In total, there were only 10 of them. Beside each treasure, there were 4 or 5 people surrounding it. There were 2 places with the most people. It seemed that the treasures for sale should be of the very high quality. Otherwise, it wouldn't have attracted so many people. After a brief glance, the 2 of them flew past the first 8 artifacts and arrived at the last 2 artifacts. One of them was a semi-extreme grade saber. Judging from its intense saber chi, it didn't seem any weaker than a pseudo-extreme grade artifact. Moreover, its price was also very high, reaching 13 million upper grade spirit stones. How could most half-step king warriors afford it? It was no wonder that everyone was looking at it without making up their minds to buy it. Can you make it a bit cheaper? I only have 8 million upper grade spirit stones. A burly man with a sturdy figure asked. The owner was an old man. He shook his head. You know this saber's might. I won't sell it for less than 13 million. If you take it to the auction, the starting price will be at least 5 million. You might not be able to buy it for 13 million upper grade spirit stones. The tall and sturdy man became anxious. Half-step king warriors who use sabers might not have 13 million upper grade spirit stones. If you take this saber to the auction, don't tell me you can sell it for 13 million upper-grade spirit stones. Moreover, don't forget that you have to pay 5% to the auction house. Then count it as my bad luck. The old man was calm and collected. If you don't want to sell it, then forget it. I'll come back to buy it after the auction. The tall and sturdy man studied the semi-extreme grade saber a couple of times before turning to leave. On the side, Yi Chen smiled. Although this saber is a semi-extreme grade artifact, its saber chi is too intense. I'm afraid it's the best among the semi-extreme grade artifacts. No wonder the owner offered 13 million upper-grade spirit stones for it. The artifacts here seem to be several times better than the semi-extreme grade saber. Murong Qingqing looked in another direction. What is it? Yi Chen also looked over. Inside the crystal counter, a gloomy shining armor floated in the air. Next to the armor was a sign. Shadow armor, pseudo-extreme grade artifact. Price, 33 million upper-grade spirit stones. Wow, it's actually a pseudo-extreme grade armor. Among the treasures, defensive treasures were usually twice as expensive as offensive treasures. The shadow armor was sold for 33 million high-grade spirit stones. Although it was expensive, it was not too outrageous. Boss, this shadow armor is way too expensive, isn't it? A defensive artifact is twice as expensive as an offensive artifact. If it were an offensive artifact, wouldn't it be 16,500,000 upper-grade spirit stones? It's a few million more than a normal pseudo-extreme grade artifact. A middle-aged man in luxurious clothes said with a frown. The owner was also an old man in his 70s. He raised his head and said slowly, "This shadow armor of mine is different from normal pseudo-extreme grade artifacts. You can't compare it to them." "How is it different?" The middle-aged man in luxurious clothes felt an itch in his heart. As a half-step king, who would want a pseudo-extreme grade defensive artifact? With a pseudo-extreme grade defensive artifact, even those who are much more powerful than him would be exhausted to death. Even if he encountered a powerful enemy, he would still be able to escape. This shadow armor is fused with a small amount of Heavenly Starstone. Heavenly Starstone is a top grade or that can only be found in the starry sky. It has a powerful force field. After fusing with Heavenly Starstone and pouring Jinyuan into it, you can activate the Heavenly Star force field, which will increase your strength by a lot. It can save your life in many situations. Sky Star Stone. The crowd was shocked. The Starstone was an extremely rare treasure among the best quality materials. Normally, it could only be found in those fallen stars. If one could obtain a piece the size of a dragon's eye, it could be sold for a sky-high price, not to mention the armor made from a small portion of the Starstone. But 33 million upper-grade spirit stones. It's too expensive. The middle-aged man's eyes turned red. The elder said slowly, "This shadow armor was supposed to be one of the most important items in this auction, but I have something urgent to do. That's why I am selling it at a low price. Actually, my price is more than 35 million upper-grade spirit stones, which you can afford." The middle-aged man was rendered speechless by the old man's words. That's right, a pseudo-extreme grade artifact fused with starstones. Even some life and death kings would be moved by it, not to mention them. Selling it for 33 million upper-grade spirit stones is definitely worth it. Murong Qingqing, besides the glove, you're also lacking a pseudo-extreme grade armor. Why don't you buy it? I think this Sky Star force field matches your Dark Force field quite well. It might even have an amplifying effect. Yi Chen transmitted his voice to Murong Qingqing. Murong Qingqing nodded. She pushed through the crowd and walked over, saying, "Boss, I want this shadow armor. Let me have a look." "You want it?" The elder looked at Murong Qingqing in astonishment, seeing that the other party was a very young and beautiful girl. His astonishment became even greater. Although 33 million upper-grade spirit stones were not his price, He also knew that if the price was set too high, he wouldn't be able to sell it in a short period of time. He had something urgent to do and couldn't afford to delay. Even so, 33 million was not a small number, but a huge number. Gemstone Island's auction house originally wanted to buy this shadow armor, but they were only willing to pay 30 million upper grade spirit stones. Not bad. Murong Chingching's expression was calm. All right. The elder opened the crystal counter and took out the shadow armor, handing it over to Murong Chingching. Receiving the armor, Murong Chingching held it with her left hand and placed her right hand on it. A faint purple-black electric current flickered in her palm. Yi Chen's eyes turned sharp. He could clearly sense that there were two different force fields fusing together. However, because the time was too short, it was hard to notice without careful observation. I'll take it. The corner of Murong Chingching's mouth curved. The star force field could indeed fuse with the dark force field and amplify it. For her, this shadow armor's value would increase by a few times. After all, her warrior force was not weak in the first place. With further amplification, it would be able to greatly affect the same level half-step kings, greatly increasing her strength. Hee, it's a pleasure working with you. The elder revealed a smile. Finally, he could leave. 33 million was a bit of a loss, but if he took it to the auction house, it would be around 35 to 40 million at most. After deducting the 5% auction fee, it would not be a big loss. Wait. Right at this moment, a black skinny elder walked out of the third floor. His footsteps were like lightning as he quickly walked over and reached out his hand to take the shadow armor from Murong Chingching's hand. Humph! Yi Qin coldly snorted and blocked in front of Murong Chingching, slapping away the elder's hand. How dare you! The black skinny elder roared at Yi Qin. Chapter 803. This is the glorious exchanges. Don't tell me you plan on robbing others' treasures? Yi Qin stood there and released a frightening aura. Although his cultivation base was only mid-half-step king, he didn't fear anyone under life and death realm in terms of aura. Huff! Upon reaching half-step king realm, one's aura had already solidified and possessed a considerable destructive power. With Yi Chen at the center, the void suddenly shook and a transparent aura shockwave spread out. Even though everyone present was a half-step king, their faces couldn't help but change color. Some of the weaker ones couldn't help but take half a step back. Fortunately, the glorious exchanges were covered in restrictions and wouldn't collapse so easily. What a powerful aura! Among the crowd, a few young men and women were attracted by Yi Chen. They didn't expect Yi Chen's aura to be this powerful. Hee, you dare to offend me in Gemstone Islands? The old man squinted his eyes and sent out an aura not inferior to Yi Chen's, clashing with Yi Chen's aura shockwave. Creaking sounds echoed in the void, as if the void couldn't bear the collision of the two's auras. There are only two strongest half-step kings in Gemstone Islands, and Darklight King is one of them. Rumor has it that even strongest half-step kings don't dare to face his Darklight palm arts head-on. Now that I've seen it, it's indeed powerful. Just his aura alone is enough to make people despair. Darklight King is a genuine strongest half-step king. I wonder where this kid comes from. He doesn't seem to know Darklight King, or else he wouldn't have clashed with him. Youngsters are all prideful. However, this kid's cultivation base isn't at the peak, probably mid-half-step king. But his aura is so powerful. There are many reasons why one's aura is powerful. This kid's aura contains a peerlessly sharp sword intent. He should have an advantage in sword intent that ordinary people can't reach. Yeah, makes sense. But he's still too impulsive. Clashing with a veteran strongest half-step king is simply asking for trouble. Everybody discussed in low voices. So, you are a strongest half-step king warrior. No wonder you are so arrogant. Cultivation wasn't everything. Although Darkbright King's cultivation base was a high-level half-step king, it didn't mean that he was the strongest half-step king. However, Yi Qin could sense his strength from his aura. Hearing the crowd's discussion, he immediately understood that this was yet another strongest half-step king. It's not too late to regret now. Otherwise, the Gemstone Islands will be your burial ground. The Darklight King sneered. His reputation in the Gemstone Islands was great. Coupled with his ruthless methods, there were not many who dared to oppose him. If this wasn't the glorious exchanges, he wouldn't be polite and would have directly killed Yi Qin, throwing him into the sea to feed the fishes. We don't know whose grave it will be, but for now you better shut up. Yi Qin's eyes shone brightly like two peerless gems emitting sword light. Creak! The void trembled, and a boundless and frightening sword intent rushed toward the Darklight King. The Darklight King didn't expect that Yi Qin would still have strength to spare. He had no choice but to admit that the latter's sword was higher than his martial will. In terms of aura, he couldn't gain the upper hand. With a muffled snort, the martial will in his sea of soul also rushed out, forming an invisible membrane in front of him. Pah! There was no soul-shaking explosion. The Darklight King's body swayed, and his left foot retreated half a step. On the other hand, Yi Qin didn't move an inch. The Darklight King's skinny face was a bit embarrassed. Although his aura and martial will weren't top-notch among the strongest half-step kings, they weren't weak either. Yet he had lost to Yi Qin by half a step. This made his old face unsightly, as if he had been slapped in the face. "You're courting death." The Darklight King squeezed out a few words with a cold expression. A layer of black radiance appeared on his right hand, and the temperature gradually rose. This was a sign that he was about to use Darklight palm arts. The Darklight King is about to take action. This is the glorious exchanges. Everybody was startled. "I'll accompany you to the end." Yi Qin's figure didn't move, but the evil vanquishing sword at his waist began to ring. A sharp sword chi seeped out of the scabbard, like a bone-scraping steel blade. "What are you doing?" Just as the two were about to take action, the manager of the glorious exchanges finally appeared. An embroidered-robed old man walked up the stairs, followed by two middle-aged men. All three were half-step kings, and the embroidered-robed old man had the highest cultivation base, a high-level half-step king. The one who spoke was precisely the embroidered-robed old man. Quickly walking over, the old man's face turned gloomy as he said, "This is the glorious exchanges, not a place for you to fight." "So it's manager he." The black radiance on Darklight King's right hand dimmed. With his hand behind his back, he forced an unsightly smile. "Are you still not going to stop?" The embroidered-robed old man's sharp gaze glared at Yi Qin. Which eye of yours saw that he was about to take action? Murong Qingqing felt that the embroidered-robed old man was too overbearing. Yi Qin hadn't even unsheathed his sword, so how could he take action? Instead, he seemed to be siding with the Darklight King. Clang! Yi Qin coldly glanced at the Darklight King, then glanced at the embroidered-robed old man. The evil vanquishing sword unsheathed by an inch on its own, then fiercely stabbed in. The sword cry was incomparably ear-piercing, as if someone was cutting glass with a sharp blade. The embroidered-robed old man's face turned ashen. Although Yi Qin didn't say anything, this action was undoubtedly a provocation, not taking him seriously at all. "What's going on?" The embroidered-robed old man turned his head and asked Darklight King. The Darklight King sneered, "This kid has no eyes, daring to compete with me over the treasure. Where would I put my old face? That's why I spoke out to teach him a lesson. I didn't expect him to be so extreme, wanting to take action against me. If it weren't for me having misgivings about your glorious exchanges, I would have killed him long ago. You're really lying through your teeth. I've already bought the shadow armor, but you wanted to snatch it. Does the glorious exchanges allow others to snatch other people's goods?" Murong Qingqing's face turned frosty. Yi Qin indifferently said, Everyone here can testify. Testify? Who can testify for you? The Darklight King sneered as his gaze swept over the crowd. Seeing the Darklight King's gaze sweeping over them, everyone shifted their gazes. Although some of them weren't cowards, they didn't want to offend the Darklight King for no reason. If they wanted to live long and well, some things were better left unattended if possible. Finally, the Darklight King's gaze fell on the old man selling the shadow armor. The old man didn't shift his gaze, and his expression didn't change as he said, "This old man is only selling artifacts. It belongs to whoever paid the spirit stones." It belongs to whoever paid the spirit stones? She hasn't paid yet. The Darklight King revealed a confident smile. Indeed, but I've already agreed to sell it to her. The old man was in a hurry and didn't want to cause more trouble. Of course, he wouldn't lie to his conscience, so he could only tell the truth. Don't worry, I'll pay however much she paid, plus 500,000 upper-grade spirit stones for you. The Darklight King had seen the shadow armor yesterday, but he didn't have that many upper-grade spirit stones on him at that time. He was short by 10 million. In order to obtain the armor, he had used his connections and borrowed a lot of upper-grade spirit stones. 2 hours ago, he had finally gathered 34 million upper-grade spirit stones. But what made him angry was that someone had beaten him to it and almost bought it. This was also the reason why he was so angry. This doesn't seem appropriate. The old man was a bit embarrassed. What's inappropriate? You haven't sold the armor yet. This doesn't violate the rules of glorious exchanges, does it? The Darklight King looked at the old man. The old man glanced at Yi Chen and faintly nodded. The exchange has its rules. As long as you don't violate them, it's fine. Since the Darklight King is willing to pay 500,000 upper-grade spirit stones, sell it to him. The old man was the chief steward of glorious exchanges, and his strength was close to a strongest half-step king. The Darklight King was famous in Gemstone Islands. Whether it was for public or private reasons, the old man didn't wish to have a conflict with the Darklight King. Moreover, Yi Chen's arrogant and unruly attitude from a moment ago had greatly dissatisfied him. Yi Chen sucked in a deep breath and said to Morong Qingqing, "Morong, give him 34 million upper-grade spirit stones. Let's go." Hearing these words, Morong Qingqing directly ignored the Darklight King and the rest and stored the armor. She then took out 3 low-grade storage rings and handed them over to the old man. Inside were 34 million upper-grade spirit stones, no more, no less. The Darklight King's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The old man checked the spirit stones in the 3 storage rings and nodded, "Just right." At the same time, he secretly transmitted to Yi Chen and Morong Qingqing, "I'm sorry, but this old man has an urgent matter and doesn't wish to provoke the Darklight King. I'll return the extra 1 million to you, privately." Yi Chen replied, "I understand your difficulties. Don't return the 1 million upper-grade spirit stones. In any case, the armor is worth it." Then, many thanks. The old man was somewhat grateful. A treasure is a hot potato. Do you think you can leave? The Darklight King had expended a great deal of effort to obtain the armor. Now that it had flown away, no matter how good his temperament was, he couldn't help but turn furious. Glorious exchanges is really bullying the weak and fearing the strong. Yi Chen looked at the elder in brocade robes mockingly. The old man's complexion turned increasingly unsightly as he shouted at the Darklight King, "Darklight King, don't be rash. This is not the outside world." Huff, 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 huff. The Darklight King took a few deep breaths, but didn't make a move. He didn't have to give face to Steward but he had to give face to glorious exchanges. Killing people here was the same as breaking the rules. Don't worry. As long as they're still in Gemstone Islands, the armor will be yours sooner or later. At that time, you won't even need to pay spirit stones. The old man transmitted a message to the Darklight King, then turned around and left with his people. "We're leaving as well. Yi Qin pulled Murong Qingqing and left. When they reached the stairs, Yi Chen turned his head and said to the Darklight King, "I believe you won't give up on the armor. We'll be waiting for you." Words were useless. Some things required strength. If the Darklight King didn't come looking for them, it would be fine. If he did, he would be courting death. Chapter 804. Blaze. Darklight King's left hand tightly clenched into a fist, emitting a frightening heat wave. He rigidly stared at Yi Chen and Murong Qingqing's backs and inwardly said, "Gemstone Islands is not suitable for fighting. Once we're outside, I'll make you beg for death." Strongest half-step kings were revered existences wherever they went. They were even fewer in number than life and death kings. As a veteran, strongest half-step king, even experts of the same level were apprehensive of him. After all, the longer one lived, the more ruthless one would become. This was something that newcomers lacked. Yi Qin and Murong Qingqing taking away the shadow armor in front of Darklight King was undoubtedly challenging his bottom line. Only heaven knew how important the armor was to him. A strongest half-step king paired with a pseudo-supreme grade defensive artifact was practically invincible under life and death realm. After Darklight King left, the crowd began to discuss in low voices. Thoroughly offending a strongest half-step king is too unwise. I'm afraid that not only will they not be able to keep the shadow armor, they will also suffer a calamity. The shadow armor is no small matter. Perhaps after equipping it, they can escape from Darklight King's hands. The speaker was a young man. He felt that it would be too much of a pity for a stunning woman like Murong Qingqing to die at Darklight King's hands. A robust man beside him turned his head and said, "You've just arrived at Gemstone Islands, haven't you? If you've been here for a long time, you'll know that this is impossible. As a veteran strongest half-step king, Darklight King's strength is unfathomable. His Darklight palm arts contain fire and earth profounds, and moreover, they have been fused to a high degree. In terms of breaking through defenses, it's extremely frightening. Although 1 or 2 palms can't kill them, a few more palms can jolt them to death even with the shadow armor's protection, unless their Genuine can operate the armor for a long time." Using a pseudo-supreme grade artifact required a large amount of Genuine. Ordinary half-step kings simply couldn't use it more than a few times. Although pseudo-supreme grade defensive artifacts didn't have the same effect as offensive artifacts and could last longer, it could only delay death. After all, the offensive power of a strongest half-step king was incomparably powerful, and Darklight King's Darklight palm arts excelled at breaking through defenses. There will always be accidents. How could there be so many accidents? After leaving the glorious exchange, the two of them saw Wang Lan in a corner. Wang Lan came up to them and said, "Do you have any other orders?" After buying the shadow armor, Murong Qingqing was in a good mood. She tossed 100 upper-grade spirit stones to the other party and said, "You should know which island is quieter and more suitable for living. Bring us there. Blue islands are usually quieter, and the deep blue island is the best. There are all kinds of architectural styles there, including luxurious courtyards, gardens, ancient castles, and even underground buildings. But only half-step kings have the right to enter the island." Wang Lan was very familiar with the affairs of the Gemstone Islands. "All right, bring us there." Yi Qin nodded. Wang Lan froze for a second, then said hurriedly, "Oh, over here." Yi Chen's words told her without a doubt that they were indeed half-step king warriors. Orchid Island did not allow people below half-step king realm to enter, but it would not be a problem if they brought someone in. After all, some half-step kings liked to be served, so they could not forbid their servants from entering, right? Therefore, Wang Lan acted as a guide and followed the two to Orchid Island. There were almost no commercial buildings on Orchid Island, only residential areas. Yi Qin and Murong Qingqing chose a huge garden and settled in. The garden's fee was not high, only 1,000 upper-grade spirit stones per month. It seemed that they did not want to earn spirit stones from half-step kings, and only wanted them to stay in the Gemstone Islands and enjoy honorable treatment. With the shadow armor in hand, Murong Qingqing returned to her room and prepared to erase the soul imprint on it. Yi Qin, on the other hand, enjoyed the scenery in the pavilion above the lake. As for Wang Lan, Yi Chan gave her an independent small courtyard which was next door. Faintly, one could hear the sound of qi tearing through the air. She should be cultivating a martial art. The green lake was covered with water lilies, each of them with different colors swaying in the wind, looking elegant and beautiful. Besides a couple of pavilions connected to each other, there was also a stone bridge made of gray rocks. From Yi Chen's perspective, the afternoon sun and the stone bridge seemed to be on top of each other, looking very picturesque. Yi Chen was a person who did as he pleased, so he lay down in the pavilion and took a nap. After sleeping for an unknown amount of time, a yellow light streaked across the sky, as if a faintly discernible meteor was streaking across the sky. Eh! A soft exclamation sounded out as the yellow light curved in the direction of Yi Chen's garden, ultimately landing in the pavilion. Yi Chen opened his eyes and said with a smile, "You also live in the Gemstone Islands." It was none other than the yellow-robed woman who had parted ways in the mysterious Yin King's ruins. Huang Mei, I still don't know your name. The yellow-robed woman sat on a stone chair with a smile and poured herself a cup of tea. Yi Chen sat in front of her and said, "Yi Chen, good name. I heard that a man and a woman offended the Darklight King in Scarlet Island's glorious exchanges. Don't tell me it's the two of you?" Huang Mei looked pensive. Yi Chen smiled, tacitly agreeing. "The Darklight King is very powerful. You'd better not be careless. If possible, it's best not to clash head-on. His Darklight palm arts are extremely powerful, and even my innate ability is somewhat unable to bear it. After so many years, his Darklight palm arts should have improved by another level." Yi Chen said, "So you've exchanged blows with him?" Yi Chen wasn't too clear on how powerful a strongest half-step king was, but he was certain that they couldn't do anything to him. You've entered half-step king realm?" Huang Mei faintly nodded and suddenly exclaimed. She hadn't paid much attention to Yi Chen's cultivation base. Just a moment ago, she unintentionally sized him up and discovered that Yi Chen was already a half-step king. Yi Chen was already unfathomable when he was at the peak of late sea of Soul Realm. How strong would he be after entering half-step king realm? Chuckling, Huang Mei said, "Seems like I was worrying for nothing." In truth, although Huang Mei felt that Yi Chen wasn't someone to be trifled with, if she went all out, she still had the confidence to defeat Yi Chen. After all, strongest half-step kings were not just for show. Moreover, she also had a pseudo-supreme grade artifact. A strongest half-step king combined with a pseudo-supreme grade artifact could erupt with an unimaginable battle strength. It should be known that pseudo-supreme grade artifacts were too high-end for half-step kings. Ordinary half-step kings couldn't use them more than a few times. On the other hand, the Zhenyuan of strongest half-step kings was incomparably deep, allowing them to bring out the might of pseudo-supreme grade artifacts to a whole new level. However, now that Yi Chen was a half-step king, his strength was bound to increase by several folds. Darklight King would most likely be at a disadvantage. Of course, she didn't know that Yi Chen was different from others. Others only had more Zhenyuan and purer Zhenyuan, but Yi Chen had upgraded his green lotus sword arts to heaven grade. Moreover, he had unearthed a half-baked sword domain. Be it in group battles or one-on-one battles, he was a frightening existence. After chatting for a cup of tea's worth of time, Huang Mei left. A few days later, not only did Murong Qingqing erase the soul imprint on the shadow armor, she also imprinted her own soul imprint on it. As a pseudo-supreme grade artifact, the shadow armor could be adjusted to a certain degree. For example, since Murong Qingqing was a female, the shadow armor had become a lot slimmer, and her chest area had 2 protrusions. Wearing it on the body wouldn't cause any discomfort. In the courtyard, Yi Qin smiled. How about testing the heavenly star force field first? All right. Murong Qingqing didn't use the dark force field. Instead, she poured her demonic power into the shadow armor and activated its heavenly star force field. Pop! A transparent ripple spread out. Standing in front of Murong Qingqing, Yi Chen felt that the surreal space had become much more viscous, and any movement he made would be more strenuous. He couldn't do as he pleased. Along with Murong Qingqing's manipulation of the heaven star force field, a repulsive force acted on Yi Chen's body like the power of heaven and earth. Dang! Dang! Yi Chen retreated several steps. Not bad. Just as Yi Chen finished his words, the repulsive force suddenly turned into a gravitational force, pulling him over. Without a choice, he had to increase his Jian Yuan circulation to counteract this gravitational force. Now, let's try the effect of combining the heavenly star force field and the dark force field. The heavenly star force field's strength was quite impressive. Yi Chen estimated that even if he circulated his Jian Yuan with all his might, he would still be affected. The closer he was to Murong Qingqing, the greater the effect. It was no wonder that Dark Light King would pay so much attention to it. After all, in a battle between experts, even a tiny gap was a gap. The surface of Murong Qingqing's body flickered with purple-black electric currents. With a sizzling sound, the space suddenly shook, and the whole courtyard became blurry. Shoo! Caught off guard, Yi Chen was repelled by an extremely powerful repulsive force. Even if he circulated his Jian Yuan with all his might, it would be useless. He was too close to Murong Qingqing, and the density of his Jian Yuan was almost the same as Murong Qingqing's. Moreover, the latter's demonic power was purer than his. Too powerful. Yi Chen was directly pressed against the courtyard's wall. If not for Murong Qingqing restraining the repulsive force, he would have been repelled even further. Moreover, he would have suffered some injuries and wouldn't have been able to get close. After restraining the repulsive force, Murong Qingqing suddenly changed the force field into gravity. Under the amplification of the heavenly star force field, the gravity of the dark force field was like a black hole. Yi Chen was directly sucked in, so fast that Yi Chen seemed to be passing through the void. Sword domain! At the crucial moment, Yi Chen released his sword domain, which interweaved with Murong Qingqing's dark force field. Although the sword domain was not a force field, it possessed extremely powerful defensive and offensive abilities. After layers of weakening, the dark force field no longer had much effect on Yi Chen. Pop! The purple-black electric currents on Murong Qingqing's body dissipated, and the force field retracted. Retracting his sword domain as well, Yi Chen praised, simply inconceivably powerful. Even a strongest half-step king can't get close to you, and can only attack from a distance. Force field had a huge effect on a whole object, but it would be much weaker against energy attacks because the energy was only temporarily gathered together and not a whole. Of course, it would still be somewhat weakened and couldn't be ignored. Murong Qingqing said, "This shadow armor has another use." What use? Whoosh! A dim light flickered, and Murong Qingqing suddenly appeared in front of Yi Chen. Speed amplification. Yi Chen's eyes lit up. Murong Qingqing's speed was already very fast, and combined with the shadow armor, her speed was probably the fastest among half-step kings. Chapter 805. With the shadow armor, Murong Qingqing's strength had increased imperceptibly, and her survivability had also increased. With Murong Qingqing's demonic power cultivation base, she could probably maintain the shadow armor for a quarter of an hour. During this time, even strongest half-step kings wouldn't be able to do anything to her. However, defense and survivability were only a last resort. To truly increase her strength, she still needed an extremely sharp offensive artifact. As the two's guide, Wang Lan naturally gave them advice and suggestions. Gemstone Archipelago holds a large-scale auction every year. The location is the Golden Island in the middle of Gemstone Archipelago. Everything that can be auctioned is the best of the best. Although I've never been there, I've heard that even the lowest grade items are peak upper grade, with the majority being half supreme grade items. The finale items can even make half-step kings go crazy. Sometimes, even life and death kings would come and participate in the bidding. How much time is left until the auction? Yi Chen's heart shook as he asked. Wang Lan said, about a month and a half. During this time, you two should prepare a lot of spirit stones. A month and a half, not bad. Yi Chen faintly nodded. As for spirit stones, they didn't lack them at all. Although Murong Qingqing had used 34 million upper-grade spirit stones, she still had 70 million left. As for Yi Chen, after obtaining Lin Yushuan's storage ring, he had 180 million upper-grade spirit stones. If not for mysterious Yin King being so powerful that he didn't have the time to obtain other people's storage rings, his spirit stones would be in the hundreds of millions. The higher the level of a martial artist, the less they would feel the flow of time. Often, a month would pass without them noticing. For ordinary people, a month was a very long time. They could do many things, become rich overnight, or go bankrupt overnight. In this month, apart from raising his cultivation base, Yi Chen spent the rest of his time cultivating Waning Moon and bewitching Mirror Shattering. Of course, the foundation of Space Profound was even more important. Waning Moon was a fusion profound martial skill, containing 80% metal profound and 60% water profound. Although it had been surpassed by the bewitching Mirror Shattering, it still had a lot of potential to be unearthed. Moreover, the bewitching Mirror Shattering consumed a lot of Zhen Yuan, while Waning Moon consumed a lot less. If he wanted to improve the metal profound and water profound, it would naturally be extremely difficult. After all, the state of being one with the world could only be obtained when breaking through realms. Although it was said to be a realm breakthrough, it was actually just a transition period. Since he couldn't improve his profoundness in a short time, Yi Chen didn't want to waste his time. Instead, he focused his research on fusing the metal and water profoundness. This month's time had not been wasted. As the degree of fusion increased, Yi Chen felt that Waning Moon's power had increased. His execution speed had also increased. Bewitching Mirror Shattering contained the Space Profound. 40% Space Profound, in terms of pure power amplification, was already equivalent to 120% Ordinary Profound. It was 2 levels higher than Ordinary Perfection Profound. This was Yi Chen's ace in the hole, and also a super killing move that he wouldn't casually use. After witnessing the might of a demonic king, Yi Chen felt that he had to cultivate bewitching Mirror Shattering to perfection as soon as possible. Although he would still be killed by the demonic human king after cultivating it to perfection, at least he had something to look forward to, which was better than no progress at all. Pop! With a wave of his sword, the fake mountain in the courtyard warped and folded, disappearing all of a sudden. Wang Lan, who happened to see the scene from the yard next door, was shocked. She could also destroy the fake mountain completely, and any condensing reality realm warrior could do it. It would be too easy. But Yi Chen, who did not release any chi power and made the fake mountain disappear without a trace, it was something she had never seen before. Of course, the fake mountain didn't disappear, but was devoured by the space power. Such a fragile thing could be directly skipped out on the process of disappearing. Another half a month passed, and the Golden Islands auction was about to begin. On this day, under Wang Lan's guidance, the 3 flew toward the Golden Island in the center of the Gemstone Islands. The island was already filled with people. Under the illumination of the sunlight, the island was suffused with a faint golden color. The people on the island were all Sea of Soul realm experts or half-step kings. There was not a single person below the Sea of Soul realm. Wang Lan said, "I can't go to Golden Island, so I'll send you here. You return to the garden first. Perhaps you'll be of use later." Wang Lan was, after all, a native of the Gemstone Islands. She couldn't be more familiar with this place. Before leaving the islands, she was the best choice as a guide, saving them a lot of time. On the island, Yi Qin and Morong Qingqing walked toward the only huge building on the island. The Golden Island auction house was entirely made of gold. Under the illumination of the sunlight, it flickered with a dazzling golden light. It was 100 times more magnificent than any building in Yi Chen's world. If the whole thing was moved there, it would definitely be called a miracle. Shio. There were already enough people on the island, but groups of people still landed on the island. Among them, there was no lack of half-step kings with astonishing auras. Let's go in. At the entrance of the auction house, Yi Chen and Morong Qingqing strode in. The Golden Island auction house didn't have any VIP rooms. The front row was filled with a large number of spectators, while the back row was filled with empty areas. Each area was separated by a golden fence. Inside, there was a table, a few soft leather chairs, and beautiful maids standing to the side. Yi Chen naturally didn't want to be squeezed with others, so he and Morong Qingqing sat in the back row. In fact, the place Yi Chen had chosen was precisely prepared for half-step kings. Sitting on the leather chairs, beautiful maids poured tea for the two. There were also fresh fruits and pastries on the table. Quite a lot of people. Leaning against the back of the chair, Yi Chen took a sip of tea. Darklight King is also here. Morong Qingqing saw the Darklight King in the third area. Darklight King clearly saw the two as well. The killing intent in his eyes wasn't concealed at all, causing the surrounding people to retreat, not daring to sit too close. Yi Chen faintly smiled and didn't look at the other party. As time passed, the spectator seats in the auction house gradually filled up. An empty area in the back was filled with many half-step kings. Among these half-step kings, there were many worthy of attention. For example, Shi Xiaobao, who had arrived at Gemstone Islands at some unknown time, the eccentric old man in raincoat, and Huang Mei, who had already met Yi Chen. Apart from them, there were also a few people who attracted Yi Chen's attention. For example, 2 women in white robes. One was a bit older, in her 30s, with a dignified appearance. The other was in her 20s, with exquisite facial features. She was Yu Bingxin of the Silver Moon White Fox clan. Both had a silver crescent moon tattoo on their foreheads. Yu Bingxin sensed Yi Chen's gaze and looked over. When she saw Yi Chen and Morong Qingqing, a pleasantly surprised smile blossomed on her face. "Young Master Yi, I didn't expect to see you here." Yu Bingxin transmitted her voice. Yi Chen said, "A coincidence indeed. Seems like the Moonlight Island of your Silver Moon White Fox clan isn't too far from Gemstone Islands." "It's not too far," Yu Bingxin said. "Bingxin, who are you talking to?" The dignified woman beside Yu Bingxin revealed a strange expression when she saw Yu Bingxin looking at Yi Chen. "Auntie, he's the young master Yi Chen I've been talking about. In chaotic demonic ocean, he killed the experts of the demonic humans and saved my life." "Oh, it's him. Then you should properly thank them." The dignified woman revealed a faint smile toward Yi Chen, her expression carrying a trace of gratitude. If not for Yi Chen, Yu Bingxin would have already been captured by the demonic humans. With the strength of the Silver Moon White Fox clan, they simply wouldn't have been able to rush over to the demonic humans and rescue her. "You too. I'm Yu Bingxin's auntie, Yuling Shuang. Many thanks for saving my life. If there's any trouble, I won't shirk my duty." Yi Chen said it's nothing. After chatting for a while, both sides stopped. During this time, Yuling Shuang noticed that the Darklight King was occasionally staring at Yi Chen and Morong Qingqing with overflowing killing intent. She creased her brows and said, "Bingxin, I'm afraid your benefactor's situation isn't good. I can see that the Darklight King has a big grudge with him. What should we do?" Yu Bingxin didn't notice this and immediately became anxious. She had also heard of the Darklight King's name. Under Life and Death Realm, very few were his opponents. Yi Chen and Morong Qingqing had offended him, and their fate was grim. It would be difficult for them to leave Gemstone Islands. Ani saved them. Yu Bingxin pulled Yu Lingshuang's sleeve. Even if you don't say it, I won't watch them die. It's just that, with the Dark Light King's strength, I'm not sure if I can repel him. I can't protect them forever, unless he's willing to come with us to Moonlight Island as a guest. I believe he won't dare to linger around Moonlight Island for a while. Once he leaves, he can leave without a trace. Yu Lingshuang was a rare genius of Moonlight Island. Since she dared to protect Yi Qin, she was naturally a strongest half-step king. Hearing her auntie's words, Yu Bingxin heaved a sigh of relief. Once the auction was over, she would certainly persuade Yi Qin to go to Moonlight Island. After a cup of tea's worth of time, the auction house was nearly full. The auctioneer stood on the stage and said a few words. Then he waved his hand, and two beautiful maids walked up with a round plate. The auction had begun. Just as Wang Lan had said, the lowest grade items were peak upper grade treasures. The first item was a dagger radiating a cold light. Its color was bright red, as if it had been soaked in blood. The starting bid was 150,000 upper grade spirit stones. After a round of bidding, the dagger was bought by one person for 350,000 upper grade spirit stones. With dozens of items sold, the auction entered its climax. The following items were all half-step extreme grade treasures, incomparably precious spirit herbs, rare materials whose names had never been heard of, or artifacts that everyone was going crazy over. The 37th item, a heart-protecting flower. On the stage, the auctioneer's face was glowing as he called out the next item. Heart-protecting flower. Yi Qin smiled bitterly. Before breaking through to half-step king realm, he had always wanted to find a heart-protecting flower. However, his wish had never been fulfilled. Who would have thought that he would see one after breaking through to half-step king realm? It was simply a freak accident. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. Of course, although the heart-protecting flower was useless to him, it was extremely useful to those who had yet to break through to half-step king realm. Therefore, Yi Qin decided to buy it and leave it for Yi family as a treasure. However, Yi Qin had clearly underestimated the crowd's desire for the heart-protecting flower. Those Sea of Soul realm experts could naturally be ignored. Some half-step kings started bidding. Many of them had sects behind them, and this was a contribution to their sections. In the future, their sects would reward them with even more wealth. Chapter 806. 700,000, 750,000, 780,000. The starting price of the heart-protecting flower was 500,000 upper-grade spirit stones. The first bidder did not even think before adding 200,000, as if he wanted to intimidate the others. Unfortunately, no one bought it. What a joke! The market price of a single heart-nourishing flower was close to 300,000 spirit stones. As an essential spirit flower for entering half-step king realm, how could anyone be intimidated by a mere 200,000 spirit stones? 1 million. Yu Bingxin's aunt Yu Lingshuang raised her hand. 1,100,000. The next bidder was the Golden Lion clan's young lord, Shi Shaobao. 1,200,000. Huang Mei also bid. Yi Qin originally wanted to bid, but seeing Huang Mei's interest, he hesitated and put down his hand. Huang Mei had helped him once in the mysterious Yin Tower. If she was determined to get the heart-protecting flower, Yi Qin decided to give it up. Of course, if the opposite party gave up on her own initiative, he would still bid. 1,400,000. This time the bidder was none other than the brocade-robed old man from Glorious Exchanges, Manager He. 2 million. Yu Lingshuang was a millennium genius of the Silver Moon White Fox clan, so her wealth was definitely not small. Humph, 3 million. Shi Shaobao sneered and added 1 million. Murong Qingqing didn't intend to bid and said with a smile, "It seems like this heart-protecting flower is going to reach a sky-high price. The rarer something is, the more valuable it is. Although the heart-protecting flower is only a semi-extreme grade spirit stone, its value is definitely not limited to that. Yi Qin said, 5 million. With a smile on her face, Huang Mei ruthlessly increased the bid by 2 million, shocking everyone in one fell swoop. 5 million high-grade spirit stones was already not an ordinary number. The majority of half-step kings didn't have that much wealth. Although the heart-protecting flower was very important to the sect and could increase the number of half-step kings, sometimes one couldn't be so one-sided. 5 million high-grade spirit stones might be able to create more half-step kings. After all, not everyone needed the heart-protecting flower to enter the half-step king realm. For example, if Yi Qin didn't want to enter the half-step king realm as soon as possible, he could wait for several months or even a year and a half. A year and a half was nothing to a sea of soul realm expert. Therefore, even the arrogant Shi Shaobao gave up on bidding, as it wasn't worth it. 5 million? Forget it. Yuling Shuang also stopped bidding and looked at Huang Mei with interest. 1 million. The brocade-robed old man, steward he, didn't want to give up yet. 5,500,000. Huang Mei's expression was calm. Humph. Exhaling, steward, he leaned back in his leather chair and stopped bidding. 5 million going once, 5 million going twice, 5 million going thrice, sold. The auctioneer slammed his gavel, his face full of excitement. The heart-protecting flower was not something that could be found all the time. It was definitely out of his expectations that it could be sold for 5 million. None of the following items were sold for more than 5 million, far less than the heart-protecting flower. The atmosphere in the auction hall also dropped slightly. The 42nd auction item is a set of top-notch high-grade artifacts. It consists of armor, greaves, boots, bracers, and gloves. The starting price is 5 million high-grade spirit stones. After the heart-protecting flower, another heavyweight auction item appeared on the stage. A single top-notch high-grade artifact wasn't enough for half-step kings. However, a full set was a different story. In terms of defense, it surpassed the majority of half-step extreme grade artifacts. Apart from that, wearing a full set of artifacts would increase one's speed, attack speed, and offensive power. 3 million. Sure enough, many half-step kings were moved. They didn't have a pseudo-extreme grade artifact, so a full set of top-notch high-grade artifacts was naturally the best choice. 5 million. For million. In the end, this set of artifacts was bought by a half-step king for 6 million. The 48th auction item is a pair of purple flame demonic light gloves, a half-step extreme grade replica of the 3 most famous extreme grade gloves of the past 100,000 years. The blazing divine light gloves contains the power of fire and darkness. Among all the half-step extreme grade artifacts, it is definitely a top-notch artifact, not inferior to the majority of pseudo-extreme grade artifacts. The starting price is 8 million high-grade spirit stones, and each bid must be at least 500,000 high-grade spirit stones. The bidding starts now. If a full set of top-notch high-grade artifacts was considered heavyweight, then the purple flame demonic light gloves was super heavyweight. Just the fact that it was not inferior to the majority of pseudo-extreme grade artifacts was enough to make half-step kings go crazy. Not to mention, this pair of gloves contained the power of fire and darkness. Just as the auctioneer's voice faded, Darklight King loudly said, 10 million. What? Darklight King is also bidding? Doesn't he have a pair of pseudo-extreme grade gloves? Everyone was shocked. You guys don't know, but Darklight King only has one glove and it's not complete. Moreover, the purple flame demonic light gloves contains the power of fire and darkness. Darklight King's Zhan Yuan happens to be of the fire attribute, and he also comprehended fire profound. How could he not bid? So that's how it is. It seems like this pair of gloves belongs to Darklight King. More or less. Be it in terms of wealth or strength, Darklight King was not someone ordinary could compare to. Even if he didn't threaten you, you wouldn't be able to compete with him. Moreover, if you provoked him, he might find an opportunity to kill you and seize your gloves. Seeing Darklight King's bid, those who originally had some thoughts turned silent. Morong, it seems like we're going to have to contend with Darklight King again. Yi Chen laughed. Morong Qingqing also laughed and raised her hand. 12 million. You again. Darklight King fiercely looked at Morong Qingqing, his gaze cold and emotionless. What? Can't afford to play? Yi Chen flicked his fingers. Humph. 15 million. Darklight King turned his head. He currently had 34 million upper-grade spirit stones, and the other party had already spent more than 30 million. He didn't believe that he couldn't compete with Morong Qingqing. 16 million. This time the bidder was not Morong Qingqing, but a tall and sturdy square-faced man. This person had extremely long arms and thick palms. With a single glance, one could tell that his martial arts were extremely powerful. It's Crimson Fire King. This is going to be interesting. This square-faced man was extremely famous in Gemstone Islands. He was one of the few experts under strongest half-step kings. He was equivalent to Jin Wanshuang, who had teamed up with Yi Chen a few months ago, or perhaps even stronger. Since Crimson Fire King dared to compete with Darklight King, he had to make a great decision. After all, the gloves were something that could only be chanced upon and not sought. Once he obtained them, his strength would definitely increase rapidly. 18 million. Morong Qingqing didn't raise the price to an outrageous level. She felt that 20 million was more or less the bottom line of these people. 19 million. Darklight King hesitated for a moment before adding another million. 19 million and 500,000. Crimson Fire King only added 500,000. 20 million. Morong Qingqing made another bid. Damn it. Darklight King glanced at Morong Qingqing and his eyes flickered. He actually stopped bidding, seemingly giving up. Yi Chen observed his expression and naturally knew that Darklight King hadn't given up. Perhaps this person planned to kill both of them. That way, he wouldn't have to pay any spirit stones. 20 million and 500,000. Red Flame King fiercely gritted his teeth. His entire fortune was only 18 million spirit stones, and some of his treasures could only be exchanged for 3 million spirit stones at most. This was already his limit. Any more and he would have nothing left. After bidding, he stared at Morong Qingqing. 21 million. Morong Qingqing indifferently said, Huff, heavily spitting out a mouthful of turbid qi. Crimson Fire King's face flickered with anger, but he didn't say anything else. 21 million going once. 21 million going twice. 21 million going thrice. Sold! Congratulations to this young lady. The auctioneer suddenly slammed his gavel. Soon, someone delivered the purple flame, demonic light gloves, and Morong Qingqing also paid 21 million upper-grade spirit stones. I'll help you refine the soul imprint in these gloves. If Morong Qingqing were to refine it, it would take several days. If Yi Chen were to refine it, it would take at most a cup of tea's time. It should be known that when he was at Late Sea of Soul Realm, he could refine the soul imprint of a half-step king in a short period of time. Now that he was at half-step king realm, although his soul power hadn't made any progress, its strength had increased several times. To avoid any unexpected problems, Yi Chen decided to let Morong Qingqing equip the gloves as soon as possible. Then he would use the remaining time to familiarize himself with them. The purple flame, demonic light gloves were a pair of black gloves with purple gold veined patterns. It was soft and smooth to the touch and didn't have much weight. On the back of the gloves was a purple flame pattern. Under the flowing luster, it seemed to be burning. Receiving the purple flame demonic light gloves, Yi Chen's soul power invaded and easily erase the soul imprint inside. In less than a cup of tea's time, he succeeded. Putting on the purple flame, demonic light gloves, Murong Qingqing gradually branded her own soul mark on them. Only with a soul mark could the power of this pair of gloves be maximized. While the two were busy, several items had already been auctioned off on the auction stage. The 52nd item is a sword forging art jade strip. The auctioneer paused for a moment, took a deep breath, and loudly announced, "Sword forging art." Yi Chen's eyes narrowed, flickering with a bright light. The auctioneer continued, "This sword forging art jade strip contains everything from low to semi-extreme grade sword forging knowledge. It even contains a small portion of extreme grade sword forging knowledge. If one can master it thoroughly, it is not impossible to forge an extreme grade sword." What? It even contains the knowledge of forging extreme grade sword forging? Everyone in the auction house was shocked. In the ancient era, forging artifacts was very developed. However, as time passed, a lot of knowledge was lost. In the modern era, the highest grade artifacts that could be forged were semi-extreme grade artifacts. Moreover, only some super forces had the knowledge of forging extreme grade artifacts. Although it wasn't impossible for them to have knowledge of forging extreme grade artifacts, very few people had heard of it. Of course, to prevent people from thinking that my Golden Island auction house is deceiving everyone, I will once again declare that this jade strip contains only a small portion of extreme grade sword forging knowledge. Moreover, it is very incomplete. The auctioneer didn't dare to speak too confidently. What a joke! Some of the people in the auction house had very deep backgrounds. If he spoke too confidently, the forces behind them would definitely come to the auction house. Chapter 807. Even without supreme grade sword forging knowledge, this sword forging art jade strip will be of great use to the sect. Yi Chen said solemnly. Murong Qingqing faintly nodded. Mastering the knowledge in the sword forging art jade strip will allow one to continuously forge great swords. With enough time, a sect that has mastered the sword forging art would be able to raise a large number of sword forging masters and mass produce great swords. This is something that cannot be measured with money. Sword forging art jade strips starting price is 15 million upper grade spirit stones. Each increment must be no less than 500,000. Let the bidding begin. After explaining the situation, the auctioneer announced loudly, 16 million. Glorious Exchange's steward was the first to bid. 17 million. Sure Xiaobao didn't decline. 18 million. Yu Ling Shuang extended her right hand, her voice firm and powerful. This sword forging art jade strip needs at least 30 million before anyone will back out. Yi Qin wasn't in a hurry. He raised his teacup and took a sip. As Yi Qin had expected, the price of the sword forging art's jade strip continued to rise like a rocket. Those interested in the sword control art were not limited to the first three. Huang Mei, Scarlet Fire King, and some other half-step kings with powerful backgrounds also joined in, causing the price of the sword forging art to never stop. 35 million. The steward's voice was resounding. 38 million. Yu Ling Shuang seemed to have made up her mind to bring the sword forging art jade strip back to the Silver Moon White Fox clan. After all, it was too important to the clan. 40 million. Sure Xiaobao had already backed out of the bidding. His wealth was far from enough, and the auction house didn't accept credit. As a strongest half-step king, Huang Mei's wealth was unimaginable. Adding what she had obtained from mysterious Yin King's ruins, her wealth was probably nearing 100 million or even more. 40 million was like a feather to her. Yu Ling Shuang smiled bitterly at Yu Bingxin. If I had known earlier, I would have spent a bit more upper-grade spirit stones. Otherwise, I wouldn't be so helpless. Auntie, our Silver Moon White Fox clan doesn't have many sword users. Let's forget about it, Yu Bingxin suggested. All right, let them compete. With her hands clasped together, Yu Ling Shuang leaned against the leather chair and relaxed. The bidding continued. Apart from manager, he and Huang Mei, who were determined to get the sword-forging art jade strip, there was another half-step king who was not that famous. There are 3 people left. It's about time for us to participate. Yi Qin had many concerns. He was afraid that Huang Mei would be the only one left in the end. It wouldn't be good for him to bid, but it also wouldn't be good if he didn't bid. After all, although he was indebted to Huang Mei, he had to obtain the sword-forging technique jade scroll. 50 million. Putting down the teacup, Yi Qin stretched out his right hand. Him again. Steward, he was furious. So, young Master Yi is also interested in the sword-forging art. Huang Mei looked at Yi Qin and transmitted her voice to him. Yi Qin said, I'm sorry, it's rare for me to be interested in this sword-forging technique jade strip. How about this? After I win it, I'll share everything apart from supreme-grade sword-forging knowledge with you. I don't think you have too much hope for the supreme-grade sword-forging knowledge inside. Right, the knowledge of a damaged supreme-grade sword-forging is of little use. Since that's the case, I'll help you achieve your dream. Immediately, Huang Mei gave up. 51 million. While bidding steward, he transmitted his voice to Yi Qin. Little brother, I'm Glorious Exchange's steward he. Previously, there seemed to be some conflict between us, but as the steward of Glorious Exchanges, I have no choice in some matters. If little brother gives up, I can overstep my authority and give you a Glorious Exchanges token. In the future, as long as you set up a stall in my Glorious Exchanges, your fees will be waived. The fees charged by Glorious Exchanges were not low. The first floor was 5%, the second floor was 4%, and the third floor was 3%. In other words, selling a treasure worth 10 million could save 300,000. Once or twice didn't seem like much, but after a long time, it could save a lot of spiritual stones. Yi Chen sneered. This steward, he was really insincere if he wanted to send him away with a Glorious Exchanges token. Moreover, his tone was more or less threatening, as if he was saying, Don't be so shameless. Of course, if it was someone else, they might agree, but Yi Chen didn't need to think about it. He wouldn't be staying in Gemstone Islands for long anyway, so the Glorious Exchanges token was useless to him. 52 million. Yi Chen continued bidding. It seems like little brother doesn't want to give face to Glorious Exchanges. Steward, his face darkened, a hint of killing intent appearing at the corner of his mouth. Of course I have to give face to Glorious Exchanges, but you don't have the qualifications to represent Glorious Exchanges. Yi Chen said sarcastically, I hope you won't regret it. Steward, he gritted his teeth and said. He didn't try to persuade Yi Chen anymore. When the price rose to 56 million, steward, he gave up. He could only mobilize 50 to 60 million spiritual stones. In fact, the price he had in mind was not more than 60 million. After all, he had no idea how useful the knowledge in the swordsmithing art was. If he didn't buy it, it would be a great loss if it wasn't worth the price. 58 million. In the end, there was only one person left to compete with Yi Chen. The sword chi on this person's body was very sharp. He was a half-step sword king. The sect he belonged to was the Thousand Sword Sect, which was not far from the Gemstone Islands. Basically, everyone in the sect used swords. Therefore, this jade slip of the imperial sword technique would play an important role in the Thousand Sword Sect. 60 million. Yi Chen's expression turned solemn. It seemed like this person had prepared for this. The two continued bidding. Soon, the price rose to 70 million. The huge number made everyone in the auction hall suck in a cold breath. 70 million upper grade spiritual stones. They wouldn't be able to get this price even if they sold themselves. If they had so many spiritual stones, they could arm themselves to the teeth. 71 million. Yi Chen's expression was solemn, but his opponent's expression was 10 times more solemn. Gemstone Islands had a branch of the Thousand Swords sect, which was why he had so many spiritual stones. However, Yi Chen didn't seem to have a limit. No matter how much he bid, Yi Chen would increase without any hesitation. This made him lose all confidence. 75 million. Letting out a breath, Yi Chen increased the price by 4 million. He was determined to get the sword forging technique. This was not for the present, but for the future. When he became a life and death king, he would have the ability to roam the starry sky. If he could find some supreme grade materials, he would be able to forge supreme grade swords. How fast would that be? Although the knowledge in the sword forging technique wasn't much, it should be enough to build a foundation. The other party turned silent. 75 million, he couldn't afford it. The auctioneer waited for a while, seeing that no one else was bidding. He knew that the price had reached 75 million. Holding the hammer in his hand, he walked to the front of the auction stage and said loudly, 75 million! Is there anyone else? If not, this sword forging technique belongs to this little brother. Nobody spoke. All right, 75 million going once, 75 million going twice, 75 million going thrice. Sold. Congratulations to this little brother. With a clang, the auctioneer slammed the hammer. Soon, someone delivered the sword forging technique. Without any hesitation, Yi Chen handed over 75 million upper-grade spirit stones. The swordsmithing technique was the finale item of this auction. Thus, the auction came to an end. Someone had calculated that the total price of this auction was 420 million. Compared to the previous auctions, it was 30 to 40% higher. This was definitely a large-scale auction that was rarely seen in 10 years. Before leaving, Darklight King and manager, he coldly glanced at Yi Chen. The half-step Sword King from Thousand Swords sect also stared at Yi Chen for a long time. Seems like I can't stay here for long. Yi Chen sighed inwardly. He wasn't afraid of Darklight King, but the glorious exchanges and Thousand Swords sect behind manager, he made him apprehensive. Who knew if the sword forging technique would provoke a life and death king? Let's go back to the garden. Gemstone Islands didn't have any life and death kings, so Yi Chen needed to do something useful in this short period of time. Leaving the Golden Island auction house, the two hurried back to the garden. At this moment, the sky was already dark. In the bedroom, Yi Chen took out the sword forging technique and poured his soul power inside. Buzz! A cool and refreshing feeling suddenly rushed into Yi Chen's mind, turning into countless chaotic tiny symbols. The symbols then rearranged themselves, ultimately turning into a complete knowledge of sword forging technique. Low grade, mid grade, upper grade, and semi-supreme grade were clearly separated. After the semi-supreme grade, there was a short and incomplete section on forging supreme grade swords. Sure enough, it's real. Yi Chen simulated it in his mind and felt that the content was real. Although he had never studied sword forging technique, as a sword artist, he always had some inexplicable intuition. However, the initial stage of forging a sword requires a large amount of materials. Even a genius in forging swords would not be able to succeed on his first try. Even if he succeeds, it does not mean anything. The art of forging swords is broad and profound, and it is not something that can be mastered in a day or two. It is also not something that can be deepened with just 1 or 2 tries. The sky turned dark, and the night passed peacefully. Early the next morning, Yi Chen had Wang Lan bring them to the Yellow Islands. Yellow Islands sold all kinds of materials, spirit grasses, precious ores, gems of various attributes, and basically anything one could wish for. According to the grade of the materials, they were divided into light yellow islands, bright yellow islands, and orange islands. Light yellow islands sold low-grade to mid-grade materials. Bright yellow islands sold mid-grade to upper-grade materials, and orange islands sold upper-grade to semi-supreme grade materials. As for whether one could find a supreme grade material, it depended on luck. Instead of going straight to the Orange Island, Yi Chen's trio went to the light yellow island. Without a change in expression, Yi Chen bought over 10,000 sets of low-grade materials and several thousand mid-grade materials. For a moment, the light yellow island was in short supply of materials for forging artifacts. Following the same pattern, Yi Chen looted the bright yellow and orange islands, buying a total of 12,000 sets of different low-grade materials, 5,000 sets of different mid-grade materials, and 2,000 upper-grade and semi-supreme grade materials. He even got 3 sets of supreme-grade materials. If not for an upper-grade storage ring and many mid-grade and low-grade storage rings, Yi Chen wouldn't have been able to store so many materials. After buying the materials, Yi Chen and Murong Qingqing prepared to leave. There were too many powers in Gemstone Islands, and staying here wouldn't bring them any good. Lord Darklight King, they've left. In the tea house, a person walked to Darklight King's side and reported, "Well done." Darklight King put down the teacup in his hand and abruptly stood up, his face overflowing with killing intent. Chapter 808. After leaving the Gemstone Islands, Yi Chen and Murong Qingqing headed south. Hundreds of millions of li away was a place Battle King had once visited. The reason Yi Chen had come to the Southern Deep Sea was precisely because of this. He wanted to see if that place was like the one in Battle King's memories. In one night, Murong Qingqing had already branded her soul imprint on the inside of the purple flame demonic glove. At this moment, she was fiddling with the purple flames, which were the inherent power of the glove and possessed extremely powerful corrosive properties. As the purple flames receded, a faint black light pattern appeared on the surface of the glove. This was the dark halo formed by the dark energy. It had a tremendous amplification effect on warriors with dark energy. As for how much amplification it was, it could only be determined through a battle. 1,000 li behind the two, a flickering black radiance streaked across the sky and chased after them with astonishing speed. Its speed was so fast that it couldn't even be described as lightning. What belongs to me will belong to me. Enveloped in the black radiance, Darklight King's eyes were ice-cold and emotionless. With a swish, his speed increased once again, and the black radiance flickered faintly. Coming! Yi Chen sensed a powerful fluctuation rapidly approaching from behind. Turning around, he saw Yi Chen and Murong Qingqing standing side by side. Swish! With a flicker of black radiance, Darklight King appeared 10 li away from the two. You two are truly daring. You actually didn't increase your speed to the maximum. Darklight King was somewhat surprised. The speed of a half-step king wouldn't be too far off, although he was confident in catching up to Yi Chen and Murong Qingqing. He didn't expect them to be this fast. Why would we hide from you? In fact, we were waiting for you. Fortunately, you didn't disappoint us. Yi Chen said indifferently. Arrogant. Darklight King was infuriated by Yi Chen's attitude. A black radiance burst out from his body, making him look like a shining black sun. His powerful aura caused the ocean to surge violently. Yi Chen, let me. Murong Qingqing took a step forward. That's good. You can test out how strong the shadow armor and purple flame magic glove are. Yi Chen nodded. With the shadow armor, even if Murong Qingqing faced a veteran's strongest half-step king like the Darklight King, she would be invincible. Moreover, with the purple flame demonic glove, Murong Qingqing's offensive power had already surpassed the majority of half-step kings, allowing her to clash head-on with the strongest half-step king. As for how powerful Murong Qingqing would be, Yi Chen couldn't make a precise guess, because he himself had never exchanged blows with the strongest half-step king. Hee, you are sending your woman to her death. Don't think that just because she has the shadow armor and the purple flame demonic light gloves, I can't do anything to her. The power of a strongest half-step king is something you will never understand. The Dark Bright King was so angry that he started laughing. The black radiance on his body became even more dazzling. The piercing black radiance illuminated everything within several hundred li. There's going to be a war over there. Several thousand li away, many people were rushing over. They were Huang Mei, Yu Lingshuang, Yu Bingxin, Scarlet Fire King, Steward He, as well as some well-informed half-step kings. Huang Mei's speed was the fastest. As she moved, she was like a flickering yellow light. With each flicker, she covered a distance of 100 li. Scarlet Fire King was second only to Huang Mei. With his entire body covered in flames, he was like a blazing meteor, emitting a dazzling fiery radiance. Steward, he had brought a total of 4 half-step kings. Nobody knew what their intentions were, but their speed was very fast. They were clearly first-rate half-step kings. Yu Lingshuang probably hadn't raised her speed to the limit. Together with Yu Bingxin, 2 streaks of silver light streaked toward the dazzling black sun ahead. Auntie, faster! Yu Bingxin mustered her strength and continuously accelerated. I'll bring you along. Yu Lingshuang smiled bitterly and grabbed Yu Bingxin's arm. The silver moon white fox phantom suddenly appeared behind her. With a swish, its speed doubled. At a glance, it seemed as if it was leaping in the void. Swish, 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 swish. Nearly 20 people flew toward the three's location at the same time. Yi Chen and the other 2 had also sensed their arrival, so they exchanged glances. I forgot to say goodbye to Yu Bingxin. Yi Chen had left in a hurry. Although he had coincidentally met Yu Bingxin in the Golden Island auction house, he hadn't seen her again. Young Master Yi, this person is extremely powerful. You should let my auntie help you. From afar, Yu Bingxin's voice wrapped in Zhenyuan transmitted to Yi Chen's ears. Many thanks for your kindness, but there's no need. Yi Chen tactfully declined. Yu Bingxin anxiously said, strongest half-step kings are not as simple as you think. They are different from ordinary half-step kings. They have already refined Zhenyuan into their bone marrow. Refining Zhenyuan into blood vessels could allow one to reach half-step king realm. When all 3 blood vessels were filled with Zhenyuan, one would have to refine Zhenyuan into the bone marrow. Once one reached this step, not only would their Zhenyuan be incomparably robust, but its purity would also be incomparable to before. At this point, as long as one's profound martial skills and martial spirit reached the standard, one could be considered a strongest half-step king. I know. How could Yi Chen not know the strength of strongest half-step kings? Just the disparity in Zhenyuan alone was not something ordinary methods could make up for. Since you know, why are you still? Yu Bingxin was puzzled. Bingxin, let me talk to him. Yu Lingshuang stopped Yu Bingxin and said to Yi Chen, Young Master Yi, perhaps you have some understanding of strongest half-step kings, but you definitely don't know as much as I do. After all, I'm a strongest half-step king himself. To become a strongest half-step king, refining Zhenyuan into the bone marrow is only the most basic. My martial spirit might not necessarily be that much more powerful than the majority of half-step kings, only a slight increase in strength. As for profound martial skills, I've heard Bingxin say that your profound martial skills are not the least bit inferior to strongest half-step kings and might even surpass them. However, Yu Lingshuang's tone changed as she continued. Strongest half-step king is only a general term. In fact, at this realm, one has already entered the first layer of life and death challenge. The so-called life and death challenge is a bridge leading to life and death realm. There are 3 layers in total. Once one breaks through the 3rd layer, one will officially become a life and death realm king. However, the first layer is easy, but the second layer is extremely difficult. Precisely because of this difficulty, the gap between each layer is not small. According to my guess, Darklight King had already reached the 2nd layer a year ago, and his strength is much higher than the first layer of strongest half-step kings. Then, what layer is Senior Yu at? Yi Chen asked. Yu Lingshuang said, I'm currently at the peak of the first layer. However, with the bloodline power of the Silver Moon White Fox clan, it won't be difficult for me to fight the second layer. Although I'm grateful for Senior Yu's good intentions, Yi Chen and Morong Qingqing have the confidence to fight the Darklight King. Senior Yu, just wait and see. With Battle King's memories, there was nothing Yi Chen didn't know regarding cultivation. However, Morong Qingqing possessed demonic power and dark force field, as well as the shadow armor and purple flame demonic gloves. She might not necessarily have the strength to fight the Darklight King. As for Yi Chen himself, there was no need to even mention it. Sai, forget it. I know that youngsters are arrogant. Perhaps you too will indeed give me a big shock. Yu Lingshuang shook her head. Since she couldn't convince Yi Chen, she might as well let them suffer a bit. In any case, she would be watching from the side, ready to lend a helping hand at the crucial moment. Young Master Yi, Miss Morong, you must be careful. Seeing that the other party was still full of confidence, even after her aunt had said this much, Yu Bingxin no longer tried to persuade them. She had a faint feeling that Yi Chen might really give them a big shock. Yi Chen, Miss Morong, I believe the two of you will make the Darklight King eat a big loss. Unlike Yu Lingshuang, Huang Mei knew Yi Chen and Morong Qingqing very well. As far as she was concerned, the two belonged to the inhuman category. Of course, Morong Qingqing was indeed inhuman, and possessing superhuman strength was understandable. On the other hand, Yi Chen belonged to the inhuman category. Yi Chen chuckled. After a while, those who had rushed over to watch the battle stopped and watched from afar. The Darklight King might not have 100% chance of winning 1 against 2, but he should have a 70 to 80% chance. I wonder what their real strength is. None of the spectators were ordinary characters. Each of them had keen eyesight. Although the Darklight King was a veteran, strongest half-step king, he also had a pseudo-supreme grade artifact, and perhaps more than 1 or 2. The reason they had come was partly to watch the show, and partly to fish in troubled waters. Licking his lips, the Darklight King sneered. It's been a long time since I've slaughtered. Today, I'll let you two experience my strength. The fact that he had reached the second layer of life and death chamber was only known by a few people. Only strongest half-step kings could sense it. Morong, be careful. Yi Chen signaled Morong Qingqing with his eyes. I know, I won't be careless. Morong Qingqing flew out and stopped 5 li away from the Darklight King. What, 1 against the Darklight King? I thought that kid had some ability. Who would have thought that he's relying on a woman? But this woman's strength alone doesn't even have a 10% chance against the Darklight King. Even if they're confident, they're too arrogant. Do they think the words of strongest half-step kings are spoken casually? Everyone's faces were filled with puzzlement, and soon after, they revealed expressions of pity. The two of them were probably going to die. The Darklight King wasn't in the mood to talk with the two. His body flickered with a black light, and as if teleporting, he flew toward Morong Qingqing at an extreme speed. Spreading open his right hand, a flickering black light faintly appeared. Retreat! Morong Qingqing roared, and a purple-black electric current surged out of her body. The dark shadow armor was immediately activated, and a formless and powerful force field fiercely radiated out with her as the center. Due to the force field being too powerful, the magnetic field of the heaven and earth was distorted, and wind, fire, thunder, and lightning flickered simultaneously. Pop! A shocking scene occurred. How did the Darklight King arrive? How did he fly back? The frightening recoil caused his face to turn pale, and his eyeballs to almost pop out. This time was different from the previous exchange with Yi Chen. Morong Qingqing had pushed the dark force field to the limit, fusing it with the heavenly star force field. Even a strongest half-step king wouldn't be able to get close to her. The might of the dark shadow armor was fully displayed on Morong Qingqing's body. Chapter 809. What a powerful force field! Yu Lingshuang sucked in a breath of cold air. As a strongest half-step king, she knew better than anyone how much power was required to repel them with a force field. After all, the Zhenyuan of a strongest half-step king had already reached the peak of half-step king realm. Sure enough, Huang Mei revealed a faint smile. She had already witnessed Murong Qingqing's dark force field. However, back then, she didn't put it in her eyes at all. However, the current dark force field was something that even she had to sigh in admiration. Thinking about it, it should be thanks to the shadow armor. Dark Light King was actually repelled by the force field? This is too exaggerated. Dark shadow armor. It's definitely the dark shadow armor. No wonder she didn't hesitate to fall out with Dark Light King and buy it. If my guess is correct, she cultivated some kind of force field. Combined with the Heavenly Star force field of the dark shadow armor, it's not as simple as 1 + 1. I was wondering why she dared to fight Dark Light King alone. Turns out she had a trump card. Everyone discussed spiritedly, feeling shocked. Humph. The dark shadow armor is a pseudo-supreme grade artifact. Activating it requires a large amount of Jinyuan. Let's see how long you can last. The head steward's eyes flickered as he inwardly sneered. Aunt, young Lady Murong has such a powerful force field that even Dark Light King can't approach her. Is she undefeatable? Yu Bingxin said happily. Yu Lingshuang shook her head. A pseudo-supreme grade artifact is no small matter, but it's still too early to say she's undefeatable. Unless she can activate her defensive artifact, the outcome won't change. At most, she'll only be able to buy some time. After flying back dozens of li, Dark Light King finally managed to stabilize his body. At this moment, his breathing was ragged, and his chest was heaving up and down. Although the sudden repulsive force didn't injure him too much, it wasn't pleasant either. Just a moment ago, his heart had almost reached its limit due to inertia. After all, being pushed back dozens of li while moving at full speed would not feel good. If one's cultivation base was a bit weaker, they might even be killed by the repulsive force. Good. Dark Light King said good twice in a row. He really didn't expect the other party to have such a trick up their sleeves. No wonder they didn't put him in their eyes for the sake of this shadow armor. It turned out that they were after the Heavenly Star force field of the shadow armor. But do you think I can't do anything to you just because you have a force field protecting you? The Dark Light King stared at Murong Qingqing, taking the opportunity to recover. Murong Qingqing said lightly, You said it yourself, I didn't. The Dark Light King grinned. The further you are from the force field, the smaller the effect. I wonder if you can block my long-range attack. In most situations, close-range attacks were the most powerful. However, with the Dark Light King's strength, his attack wouldn't be weakened by much if the distance was a little further, and it would still have terrifying, destructive power. Murong Qingqing's dark force field made him give up on the idea of ending the battle in an instant, because he knew that it wasn't realistic. Bring it on. The surface of Murong Qingqing's body flickered with purplish-black electricity, but her expression did not change. I'll let you know the difference between us. The Dark Light King's discomfort had been completely dispelled. He approached Murong Qingqing neither too fast nor too slow, as if trying to estimate the safest distance between him and Murong Qingqing. Dark Devour. Since the Dark Light King didn't attack, Murong Qingqing took the initiative. Her hands rapidly formed seals, and in the next instant, a revolving black sphere appeared beside the Dark Light King. A powerful suction force burst out, wanting to devour the Dark Light King. Break! The Dark Light King reacted as soon as there was movement beside him. With a loud roar, he slapped the black sphere with his palm. Pum! The black sphere didn't accomplish anything and immediately exploded. Worthy of being a strongest half-step king. Seeing the Dark Light King shatter the black light sphere so easily, Yichen couldn't help but sigh in admiration. This black light sphere was no ordinary energy. Shattering it required a frightening, destructive power. Flying assassinate chop. Murong Qingqing naturally didn't think that a single Dark Devourer would be enough to deal with the Darklight King. She only did so to shorten the distance between them and use the Dark Force Field to influence the Darklight King's movements and reduce his strength. With this, the gap between them would not be that big. Swish! With a flicker of light, Murong Qingqing instantly approached the Darklight King. Both of her palms turned into blades and chopped repeatedly, creating a black blade light in the void. Damn it! Just as Murong Qingqing had expected, the Darklight King was unable to attend to anything under the Dark Force Field. Sometimes he wanted to retreat, but he was pulled forward. Sometimes he wanted to advance, but he was forced back by the repulsive force. He couldn't even bring out 40 to 50% of his strength, and was being suppressed by Murong Qingqing. If not for his high foundation and astonishing strength, he would have been killed by Murong Qingqing. This Dark Force Field is too monstrous. The Darklight King is a veteran, strongest half-step king, but he's actually being suppressed to such a state. I thought the Darklight King would be able to deal with her effortlessly, but it seems like it won't be that easy. Let's just wait and see. Demonic Finger. Murong Qingqing's figure flickered as she slightly increased the distance between them and thrust out her strongest finger. Puff! Under the amplification of the purple flame, demonic glove, the might of the Sky Demon Finger was extremely terrifying. Not only was the power of darkness even more powerful, there was also a layer of purple flames on the surface of the Sky Demon Finger. The scorching heat caused the surrounding space to distort, as if it would burn into nothingness at any moment. You really think I can't deal with you? Darklight Palm Art's first style, Darklight Palm Imprint. The Darklight King's face turned red as he forcefully circulated his Genuine to counteract the dark force field on his body. Then he clenched his right hand and pressed his thumb against the edge of his palm, pushing it toward Murong Qingqing with a majestic aura. The dark force field distorted, and a shining black palm imprint shot upward, colliding with Murong Qingqing's demonic finger. Rumble! The violent energy ripples were like the eruption of a volcano or the arrival of a tsunami, sweeping across the sky. Under the impact of such a vast energy, the ocean within a radius of several thousand miles trembled, creating huge waves that roared endlessly. At the same time, two figures were sent flying back, unable to stop their bodies. Fire-earth fusion, profound skill? Murong Qingqing's face was slightly pale. Even with the Darklight force field and the shadow armor protecting her, the blood chi and Genuine within her body were still boiling. This palm contained a powerful piercing attribute. If she didn't have the shadow armor, even if she didn't die, she would be crippled. The Darklight King wasn't having a good time either. Under the dark force field, he couldn't bring out his full strength. Moreover, Murong Qingqing had the purple flame demonic glove, which could raise her offense to a whole new level. Under such circumstances, he couldn't gain any advantage. A quarter of an hour has passed. You should have consumed more than half of your Genuine, but I haven't even used 10%. A strongest half-step king was, after all, a strongest half-step king. Darklight King quickly adjusted his condition and sent another palm strike at Murong Qingqing. This time he didn't wait to get too close, fearing that Murong Qingqing would rapidly approach and use the dark force field to affect him. Pung! Murong Qingqing didn't say anything and used the demonic finger once more, clashing with the Darklight King from a distance. Ripples of energy rippled in the sky. Murong, display your speed advantage. There's no need to hide your perfect demonic bloodline anymore. At this moment, Yi Qian transmitted his Zhen Yuan to Murong Qingqing. Biting her lips, Murong Qingqing faintly nodded. Speed was her innate talent from the demons. If she didn't display her speed advantage, her demonic power would be exhausted sooner or later. Voila! A large black chi burst out, and a pair of huge black bat wings unfolded behind Murong Qingqing. With a slight flap, Murong Qingqing's figure instantly disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already above the Darklight King. Soul extinguishing wave. Holding a black light sphere in her hand, Morong Chingcheng suddenly crushed it. Huff! A black light containing a soul attack fanned out, enveloping the Darklight King within. The Darklight King was blasted away. The pure offensive power of the soul extinguishing wave wasn't that powerful, so he didn't suffer any injuries. However, the soul attack contained within it made him somewhat dazed. He couldn't react in time and was immediately put at a disadvantage. Black bat wings. She has the perfect demonic bloodline of the demonic human race. Someone cried out in alarm. The previous battle had made everyone aware of Morong Chingcheng's identity as a demonic human. However, they didn't think that she had the perfect demonic human bloodline. After all, the perfect demonic human bloodline was extremely rare. Even in the formidable chaotic demon ocean, there were only 2 of them. However, as soon as the black bat wings appeared, it was hard for them not to know Morong Chingcheng's identity. After all, it was too similar to the appearance of the demons in the ancient records. This, Bingxin, what's going on? Yu Lingshuang looked at Yu Bingxin. Yu Bingxin replied, I only know that she's a demonic human, not a perfect demonic human. However, she killed many people in chaotic demon ocean, so she shouldn't be from there. Not from chaotic demon ocean? Yu Lingshuang's face turned pensive. Then she slowly said, Seems like I'm overthinking things. Apart from chaotic demon ocean, there are also demonic humans in other places. True spirit continent is millions and millions of li away from here. They should be from there. Very good. You actually forced me to this extent. You should be proud of yourself. However, this is still not enough. Now, I'll let you witness my true strength. Darklight King's figure shot back, increasing the distance between them. As he spoke, the black light on his body grew increasingly denser and more dazzling. Different from Morong Chingcheng's demonic power, Darklight King's Yunyuan gave off a scorching sensation that could scorch the earth. Buzz! Darklight King's Zhan Yuan undulations suddenly rose to a whole new level, and a frightening heatwave spread out in all directions with him as the center. Life and Death Chamber's second layer. Yu Lingshuang's eyes shone brightly. Before this, Darklight King had been contending against Morong Chingcheng with the strength of the first layer. But now he finally revealed his true strength. Chapter 810. Seems like I've still underestimated Darklight King's strength. Yi Chen had no idea how powerful the second layer of Life and Death Chamber was. However, Darklight King had suppressed his strength to the first layer, yet he was able to fight evenly with Morong Chingcheng. One could easily imagine how powerful the second layer would be. Moreover, the reason why Morong Chingcheng was able to contend against Darklight King was because the latter didn't dare to engage in close combat. Now that Darklight King had revealed his true strength, even if the dark force field was effective, it would be greatly reduced. Sure enough, no strongest half-step king can be underestimated. Becoming a Life and Death King didn't necessarily require one to become a strongest half-step king. In fact, the majority of people skipped this process and directly broke through from peak half-step king to Life and Death realm. However, their foundation would undoubtedly be a bit lacking. After becoming a Life and Death King, the undying body could only reach the realm of broken limb regrowth, which was a common path in Life and Death realm. However, if one became a strongest half-step king and then broke through to Life and Death realm, they could directly reach the second realm of undying body, flesh derivation, which would greatly increase their survivability and foundation. The reason for these two situations was actually related to one's potential and foundation. As for other factors, nobody could say for sure. Therefore, such a situation appeared in Elysium. Some people stopped at peak half-step king realm, unable to advance even an inch in their life. However, once their luck broke out, they would directly become Life and Death Kings. On the other hand, after reaching peak half-step king realm, due to their solid foundation and high potential, they would enter the strongest half-step king realm, and then step by step, they would reach life and death realm. Although the former occupied the majority, it was only because of the large number. After all, peak half-step kings were many times more numerous than strongest half-step kings. Thus, the number of life and death kings was naturally higher. The latter might not necessarily become life and death kings, but the probability was extremely high, reaching 1 in 3 to 4. Generally speaking, 10% of newly ascended life and death kings within 100 years were strongest half-step kings, and 90% were peak half-step kings. Therefore, strongest half-step kings could be said to be a dividing line of potential. Those who could become strongest half-step kings had extremely high potential. After becoming life and death kings, they would be much more powerful than ordinary life and death kings. If they couldn't become strongest half-step kings, their potential would be one level lower. As a strongest half-step king, Dark Light King's potential was naturally not weak. Of course, Yi Qin didn't dare confirm that he had relied on his own potential to become a strongest half-step king. Elysium was boundless, and there might be some heavenly treasures that could increase one's potential. He, Dai, Obsidian Palm. With his strength rising to the second layer, Dark Bright King roared and slammed his palm toward Morong Qingqing. The enormous palm imprint blotted out the sun, and a fiery chi wave swept out in all directions, evaporating the ocean waves. Swish! Not wanting to face Dark Bright King head-on, Morong Qingqing flapped her black bat wings and instantly disappeared. With her natural advantage in speed and the speed amplification of the shadow armor, Dark Bright King would have a hard time locking onto her. "Where are you going?" Dark Bright King thrust out dozens of palms in a row, sending out fiery palm energies. Swish! 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 Morong Qingqing's figure flickered unceasingly in the void, dodging palm energies one after another. Her extreme speed left everyone dumbfounded. Demonic finger! Suddenly, Morong Qingqing attacked Dark Bright King with her finger. Who could have expected that after reaching the second layer of life and death chamber, Dark Bright King's battle strength would be no small matter. With a single palm, he slapped away the black, sun-like, demonic finger. The power of the sky demon finger brushed against the surface of the ocean and left a terrifying mark. Finally, with a loud bang, it exploded and created a huge crater with a diameter of tens of miles. Soul-extinguishing wave. Morong Qingqing felt that her demonic power was about to be exhausted. Up until now, she had barely used any of her trump cards. Most of the time, she was using ordinary attacks to contend against Dark Bright King. It was not intentional, but the shadow armor and purple flame demonic gloves consumed too much demonic power. If not for the fact that she had activated the shadow armor in the middle of the battle, her demonic power would have been exhausted long ago. Even so, after using the soul-extinguishing wave, she didn't even have 10% of her demonic power left. The soul-extinguishing wave's range was too wide, and its speed was too fast. Dark Bright King knew that he couldn't dodge, so he circulated his martial will and arranged a will barrier in front of him. Boom! 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 The will barrier blocked the soul attack, and the protective Zhen Yuan blocked the soul-extinguishing wave's energy attack. Dark Bright King wasn't injured in the slightest. Demonic fist. Suddenly, Morong Qingqing's speed soared, and she instantly appeared before Dark Bright King. Not good. Dark Bright King pushed his Zhen Yuan to the limit, and a flickering black light burst out. His whole body was like a black sun, burning fiercely. Large patches of black flames surged out, containing a terrifying power capable of scorching the earth. Just as he finished all of this, Morong Qingqing's attack arrived. Morong Qingqing's right hand clenched into a fist, and the black, demonic power vortex on her fist became tighter and tighter before fiercely bombarding Dark Bright King's protective Zhen Yuan. Pum! This fist contained immense power, and a tyrannical, demonic power burst out. With a swish, Dark Bright King was sent flying. Before that, he clenched his teeth and slammed his palm on Morong Chingching's protective Zhenyuan. Unfortunately, he didn't have the time to exert his full power and was sent flying, leaving behind a black streak in the void. Puff! Morong Chingching spurted out a huge mouthful of blood. Demonic Fist was the second martial art she had inherited from demons after Demonic Finger. Compared to Demonic Finger, Demonic Fist consumed a lot more demonic power, compressing a large amount of demonic power into the fist to deal several times more damage to the enemy. Unfortunately, Morong Chingching didn't have much demonic power left. As soon as she used Demonic Fist, she didn't have much demonic power left in her body, causing the shadow armor to dim. Fortunately, Dark Bright King was also sent flying, and the palm didn't connect. Otherwise, it wouldn't be as simple as just vomiting blood. Compared to Morong Chingching, Dark Bright King wasn't having a good time. He didn't have a pseudo-supreme grade defensive artifact, and could only rely on his protective Zhenyuan to resist Morong Chingching's Demonic Fist. However, how could Demonic Fist be so easy to defend against? Therefore, he was injured for the first time by Morong Chingching, with blood dripping down from the corner of his mouth. Dark Bright King stood dozens of li away with bloodshot eyes, as if he couldn't believe that he had been injured by Morong Chingching. What kind of profound martial art is this? So powerful. Its offensive power increased several times, even injuring Dark Bright King, who is at the second layer of life and death chamber. It shouldn't be a profound martial art. Perhaps a secret art? Someone raised a doubt. Indeed, it's not a profound martial art, nor is it a secret art. If I'm not mistaken, this is a martial art inherited from the demons, which belongs to the demons. Demons have all kinds of martial arts, and this should be a martial art that compresses demonic power to the extreme. Everybody was shocked. Even if Dark Bright King didn't have a pseudo-supreme grade defensive artifact, he had at least a powerful half-step supreme grade one. Moreover, his cultivation base far surpassed Morong Chingching's, having reached the second layer of life and death chamber. One could easily imagine how powerful his defense was. However, he was still injured by Morong Chingching's hand. This demonic fist was simply too tyrannical. Morong, I'll go next. Yi Chen was quite supportive of Morong Chingching and Dark Bright King's duel. After all, it would be hard to avoid encountering strongest half-step kings in the future. This duel would allow them to clearly witness the strength of a strongest half-step king, as well as the strength of Morong Chingching. Now that Morong Chingching's demonic power was exhausted and she was injured, Yi Chen naturally had to step forward. Morong Chingching faintly nodded and retreated to Yi Chen's side. What's going on? Don't tell me she's giving up? What else can she do? Can't you see that her demonic power is exhausted? Without demonic power, anyone can kill her. You're right. Demonic power is different from Zhenyuan, and there's basically no pill that can replenish it. This is also one of the shortcomings of the perfect demonic human bloodline. Seeing Morong Chingching retreat, the crowd sighed inwardly. Dark Bright King was Dark Bright King after all, not someone ordinary people could deal with. Even after exhausting all means, he could only delay for a short period of time. At this moment, who among the two could stop him? That kid was probably even worse. Dark Bright King had only suffered a minor injury. He quickly flew over and coldly said, "Not bad. You actually managed to injure me at the last moment. Unfortunately, your endurance is a bit lacking. That was merely a warm-up for me. Then let's start now." Treading on the void, Yi Chen walked out step by step, stopping 10 li away from Dark Bright King. "Start? With just you?" Dark Bright King laughed heartily as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. "No way. Don't tell me he's even stronger than that woman? His cultivation base is only mid-half-step king realm, not even as high as mine. He probably thinks that Dark Bright King has consumed a lot of Jinyuan and is injured, so he wants to take turns to defeat him. Fart. This kind of injury is nothing to Dark Bright King, although this kid's cultivation base is similar to that woman's. One has Jinyuan while the other has demonic power. They are simply incomparable. In terms of martial skills, Demonic Power Fist is incomparably tyrannical. His profound martial skills are already not bad at all. Only his sword intent is a bit more powerful. Unfortunately, in a situation where the difference in willpower isn't too great, it won't be able to play a decisive role. Everybody's mouths were wide open, unable to understand where Yi Chen's confidence came from. Ani, Yu Bingxin was a bit worried. Dark Bright King was frighteningly powerful. Murong Qingqing had exhausted all her means, yet she couldn't do anything to him. In the end, she would exhaust her demonic power and retreat. Yi Qin would be in danger. Let's watch first. Yu Lingshuang's expression was grave. If Yi Qin couldn't defeat Dark Bright King, she would have to lend a hand. Therefore, she had to grasp the perfect timing. Let me see your true strength. Among the crowd, only Huang Mei had complete confidence in Yi Chen and said inwardly. Stopping laughing, Dark Bright King licked his lips and said, "Don't think that my strength has fallen after the battle. I'm not afraid to tell you that my blood is boiling. I hope you can take one move from me. If you can't, then you can die." Bang! Black light erupted as Dark Bright King charged at Yi Chen with extreme speed, slapping out with his palm. Black Kiln Giant Palm attack. Clang! Unsheathing the evil vanquishing sword, Yi Chen's figure leaned forward. With a swish, he attacked at an unimaginable timing, brushing past Dark Bright King's body. Immediately, a black crescent-shaped sword energy appeared and streaked across Dark Bright King's body. What happened next shocked everyone. In a single exchange, Dark Bright King's entire body was sent flying. The clothes on his chest were torn, and a clear sword mark was left on his semi-supreme grade armor. He spurted out a huge mouthful of blood, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. A single sword strike had sent Dark Bright King flying. Chapter 8:11. How? How is this possible? Yu Lingshuang and Yu Bingxin were not the only ones shocked. Apart from Huang Mei and Murong Qingqing, everyone else was astonished to the extreme. They even wondered if they were seeing things, or if they were hallucinating. Otherwise, how could such a scene happen? Darklight King was sent flying by Yi Chen's sword. Dark Bright King's cultivation base was 3 levels higher than Yi Chen's. Yi Chen was a mid-half-step king, and above him was the high level. Then there was the first layer of life and death chamber and the second layer of life and death chamber. Just the difference in cultivation base alone was enough to widen the gap between the two. Darklight King might not be able to injure Yi Chen with a single palm strike, but he should at least be evenly matched. Who could have imagined that Yi Chen would be so frightening, gaining the upper hand in a single exchange? Yi Chen indifferently smiled, but didn't pursue his opponent. When he was at peak late sea of Soul Realm, he had the strength of a strongest half-step king with a Thunder Disaster sword in hand. Now that he had reached mid-half-step king realm, even without the evil shattering sword, he was confident that he could contend against the Darklight King, who was at the second layer of life and death chamber. Adding the evil shattering sword, the result could be easily imagined. As for the advantage in terms of cultivation base, Yi Chen was indeed much weaker than Darklight King. However, one shouldn't forget that Yi Chen's profound martial skill, Waning Moon, was his trump card. No matter how powerful Darklight King's Darklight Palm Arts were, they were still much weaker. In terms of will, Yi Chen's Destruction Sword intent had long since reached the 5th step, which was equivalent to an ordinary 6th step sword intent. On the other hand, Darklight King's martial will was merely at the peak of the 4th step. A gap of 1.5 step in will was even harder to make up than cultivation base. In a situation where both sides had similar fighting strength, The one with the higher will would usually have the last laugh. As for the reason, it was very simple. Humans were made of flesh and blood, and after a long battle, their condition would inevitably decline. For example, their genuine would decrease, and as long as they didn't die, they would not fluctuate too much. It could be said that the strength of one's will determine one's potential. As expected, I've really met someone who has the chance to become a legend. Huang Mei smiled faintly. Since ancient times, there would be many unparalleled experts born in every era. However, there would only be one or two legendary figures in every era. Currently, there were no legendary figures in this era. Although those titled monarchs were strong, they were only considered as unparalleled masters and not legendary figures. However, the situation had started to change a few years ago, or even 10 years ago. Countless geniuses were competing to be born, each more abnormal than the previous one, each more monstrous than the previous one. Everyone was guessing that in the next few decades, the whole of Elysium would undergo a huge change. When the geniuses gathered from the stars grew up, perhaps Elysium would reach a golden age that would not lose to the early modern age. It might even catch up to the medieval age. Huang Mei had been roaming the deep sea for many years, but Yi Chen was the first person that made her have this kind of thought. There was no other reason than that Yi Chen was too abnormal and had somewhat broken the balance. Stop! The Darklight King's Zhan Yuan erupted to the limit, and his entire body came to a halt. The void twisted under his feet. Raising his head, the Darklight King fixed his gaze on Yi Chen. In that split second, Yi Chen had only made two movements, advancing and attacking. However, these two movements had left him helpless. It was as if his every move had already been calculated by the opponent. No matter what he did, the outcome would not change. What shocked him even more was that Yi Chen's instantaneous burst of speed was even greater than Murong Qingqing's. What kind of explosive power was this? Murong Qingqing was healing her injuries while watching the battle. Yi Chen sending the Darklight King flying with a single sword strike was not out of her expectations. No one was clearer than her about how fast Yi Chen's attacking speed would be once he entered a battle state. He was like a peerless sword that would not be unsheathed, but once it was unsheathed, it would definitely injure the enemy. Very well. You're worthy of me revealing my trump card. In the battle against Murong Qingqing, the Darklight King had many trump cards that he hadn't used. Admittedly, part of this was due to the dark force field, which prevented him from engaging in close combat. However, the main reason was that he didn't want to do so. For him, although Murong Qingqing was difficult to deal with, it was not enough for him to use his trump card. Then let me experience the foundation of a strongest half-step king. Holding the evil vanquishing sword, Yi Chen stood in the void. His blue robes fluttered in the wind like a blue banner. The Darklight King is getting serious. The spectators who had some understanding of the Darklight King discussed in low voices. Before this, the Darklight King hadn't used any trump card. From start to finish, he had only used the first style of the Darklight palm arts. It should be known that trump cards were extremely useful. In situations where the difference in strength wasn't too great, trump cards were often the deciding factor. As one's realm increased, the requirements for a trump card to be considered more and more stringent. This was especially true for some heaven-grade secret arts, which were strange and frightening existences. It was not like the spectators hadn't seen some people instantly killing others with secret arts. As the spectators discussed, the Darklight King made his move. His first move was a killing move. He soared into the sky like a great rock spreading its wings, yet also like the pressure of empty tide. A boundless aura covered the sun and moon, throwing yin and yang into disorder. Watching the soaring Darklight King, everyone's heart sank. In their perception, the world had turned hazy and chaotic, as if doomsday had arrived. This is the true Darklight palm imprint. Take this. In the sky, The Dark Light King's thunderous roar reverberated as his palm pressed down. The palm grew larger and larger until it finally flew out, transforming into a huge palm of scorched earth. It fiercely slammed toward Yi Chen, its surface covered in cracks and boiling magma, emitting black light smoke. His schemes are truly deep. Yi Chen sneered. If the previous Dark Light palm imprint was 60 to 70% complete, then the current one was 80 to 90% complete. Looking at the scorched black palm covered in magma, it seemed no different from a real object. All of its power was contained within. However, this was still not enough. The evil shattering sword created a bright white sword flower in the air. Yi Chen waved his arm, and the sword sliced through the air. In the next second, 7 hair-thin sword chi shot out, heading toward the scorched palm at an extremely high speed without making a sound. Puff, 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 puff. A shocking scene occurred. The seemingly harmless slender sword chi immediately gained the upper hand as soon as it came into contact with the scorched black palm. The 5 fingers of the scorched black palm were the first to be chopped off, leaving the palm and disappearing into dust. Then, the 6th sword chi sliced through the center of the scorched black palm, and the 7th sword chi pierced through it in one go. It was like the sun and moon had broken through and dawn had broken through. The Dark Light palm imprint had been broken. What? Before the sword chi arrived, the chilling sword intent had already assaulted Dark Light King's face, causing his scalp to go numb. The sword chi was simply too fast. Because of its speed, it was unstoppable and unstoppable. At this moment, the Dark Light King couldn't dodge even if he wanted to. He was sure that if he tried to dodge, he would be struck by the sword chi for sure. Seal! At this critical moment, the veins on Dark Light King's forehead bulged. Vigorous Zhen Yuan erupted like a volcano, frantically strengthening his protective Jin Yuan to resist the sword chi. Clang! In the next moment, the sword chi slashed on Dark Light King's protective Jin Yuan, creating a metallic clanging sound. A sword mark was left on the latter's protective Jin Yuan. If the sword chi hadn't cut through the scorched black palm first, it wouldn't have been hard for it to break through the protective Zhen Yuan. Dark Light King, if this is all you've got, then I'm truly disappointed. Unknowingly, Yi Chen had already arrived in front of the Dark Light King. The two faced each other, one panic-stricken and the other ice-cold. Chi! Yi Chen raised his sword and stabbed at the Dark Light King's protective Zhen Yuan. No! The Dark Light King roared. His body spun, and one Dark Light King after another appeared. Each of them was vivid and lifelike, and it was impossible to tell which one was the real one. It's the Dark Light King's cicada shedding secret art. Many people exclaimed inwardly. The cicada shedding secret art was a heaven-grade, high-grade secret art that was extremely difficult to cultivate. Once it was cultivated to great completion, as long as the difference in strength wasn't too great, it would be impossible for the opponent to even injure them. It was said that the Dark Light King had already cultivated the cicada shedding secret art to minor completion. Experts of the same realm shouldn't even think of touching him. Once this secret art was used, Yi Chen would most likely return empty-handed. Unexpectedly, the result was completely different from what they had imagined. Yi Chen's evil vanquishing sword was like maggots on a bone. Following an unimaginable trajectory, it pierced through one Dark Light King after another. In the end, the sword light flickered and disappeared. Dozens of li away, the Dark Light King reappeared in a sorry state. He lowered his head, his expression extremely unsightly. There was a sword hole on his thigh, from which dark red blood seeped out and dyed his clothes red. He had already used the cicada shedding secret art, but he still couldn't escape from Yi Chen's attacks. One could imagine what realm Yi Chen's eyesight, technique, and sword speed had reached. Such a terrifying swordsman didn't only make the Dark Light King feel uneasy. Everyone else was in disbelief, especially Steward He and Yuling Shuang. One had a gloomy expression, while the other was flabbergasted. As for Yu Bingxin, she was dumbfounded. How could she know that Yi Chen's strength had reached such a terrifying level in just a few months? Shaking off the blood on the evil vanquishing sword, Yi Chen was somewhat astonished. The sword art he had used to break the Darklight Palm and attack the Darklight King was the spiritual sword. As his strength increased, the spiritual sword had become more and more refined. Although its destructive power wasn't as great as Waning Moon's, it was still extremely powerful. Of course, not everyone could perform the spiritual sword to its limit. Only Yi Chen, who had the soul power, could do it. Because when the speed was too fast, the soul power would not be able to keep up, and the situation of losing control would occur. Unknowingly, the potential of the spiritual sword would be suppressed, and it would not be able to attack with its full power. The Darklight King being able to dodge the spiritual sword was undoubtedly due to this secret art. It was most likely an extremely powerful one. Go! Pointing out with his left hand, Yi Chen's expression turned cold. Clang! At Yi Chen's waist, the Thunder Calamity sword unsheathed itself and pierced toward the Darklight King like a bolt of lightning shuttling through the void. Defensive sword art. Clang! The Darklight King's fist blasted away the Thunder Tribulation sword. But how could the defensive sword art be so easily broken? Although Yi Chen's soul power hadn't increased much after entering the Half-Step King realm, it had already formed a soul membrane, greatly increasing the strength of his soul. His body swaying, the Darklight King retreated repeatedly, unable to stop his body. 15 swords. Controlling the Thunder Disaster sword from a distance, Yi Chen pressed down with his sword finger, and the Thunder Disaster sword suddenly split into 14 Zhen Yuan flying swords. Together with the Thunder Disaster sword, they attacked the Darklight King at the same time. The blood and qi in the Darklight King's body boiled, and he simply couldn't find the time to adjust his condition. He could only passively defend against the flying swords, his protective Zhen Yuan becoming increasingly thinner. He's even proficient in the lost defensive sword art. Who the hell is he? The Darklight King is actually being suppressed. Moreover, it's an absolute suppression. Yi Chen's strength piqued everyone's interest. Young master, Yi is going to win, Yu Bingxin happily said. I'm afraid it won't be that simple. Yu Lingshuang's brows slightly creased. Darklight King, what are you waiting for? Don't tell me you can't kill him. Right at this moment, the head steward sent a Zhan Yuan transmission to the Darklight King. Chapter 812. You think this kid is easy to deal with. Darklight King frantically defended against the flying swords while furiously sending a Zhan Yuan transmission back. It had to be said that the second layer of Life and Death Challenge was indeed the second layer of Life and Death Challenge. His protective Zhen Yuan was exceptionally strong. Even if he missed 1 or 2 Zhan Yuan flying swords, they wouldn't be able to injure him for the time being, unless the real body of the Thunder Disaster sword arrived. However, Darklight King was no fool. How could he allow the Thunder Disaster sword to approach him? You, Darklight King, have shaken Gemstone Islands for decades. You must have a lot of trump cards. Otherwise, you would have been replaced long ago. The head steward seemed confident that Darklight King could make a comeback. Humph. Seems like you've studied me quite well. Darklight King coldly snorted, not bothering to explain. Ding, 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 ding. 15 flying swords crazily attacked Darklight King, especially the true body of the Thunder Disaster sword. Each strike was like a thunderbolt, splashing sparks everywhere. Black star explosion. Defending for a long time would lead to a loss. Darklight King naturally understood this principle. After knocking away the true body of the Thunder Disaster sword, he roared and suddenly curled up his body. As his body curled up, a blazing black radiance erupted and condensed outside his body in a hundredth of a second. In the next moment, the Darklight King was enveloped by a 2-meter-wide scorched earth ball. The surface of the earth ball was shockingly hot, and its hardness was unimaginable. The Zhen Yuan flying swords could only create sparks and shallow scratches on its surface. Explode! A deep roar came from inside the earthen ball. Rumble! The scorched earth ball was like a small star as it exploded with a loud rumble. A powerful impact swept out in all directions, not only destroying Yi Chen's defensive sword art, but also breaking the tip of the Thunder Disaster Sword. As for the other Zhen Yuan flying swords, they had long since been annihilated, no longer existing. Rip! A beam of blue cold light shot towards him. Yi Chen reached out 2 fingers and caught it. It was the tip of the Thunder Disaster Sword. Fusion of fire and earth profound. Yi Chen's eyesight was extremely sharp, and he could tell that Darklight King's Black Star Explosion was a move created from the explosion of stars. In Elysium, life and death realm experts could roam the starry sky and descend upon beautiful stars. Some of these stars were very small, and life and death kings could easily destroy them. However, when a small star exploded, ordinary life and death kings would retreat 3 feet, fearing that they would be caught in the center of the explosion. Although Darklight King's Black Star Explosion was crude, it was undoubtedly frightening to experts of the same level. After breaking Yi Chen's Imperial Sword Art, the Darklight King's aura rose again and again. A flickering black radiance surged around his body like a black flame. You are the first and last person to force me to this extent. The Darklight King's voice rumbled like thunder. The violent sound waves raised towering waves with a shocking momentum. Really? Yi Chen's complexion didn't change as he flung the Thunder Disaster Sword's tip. I didn't intend to reveal too many of my trump cards, but you've made me make an exception. So die. Darklight Palm Art's second style, Blazing Earth. His whole body soared into the sky, and his right hand was scorched black as he pushed it toward Yi Chen. Rumble. Black light and scarlet flame light interweaved together like a volcanic eruption, as if the Earth's crust had cracked open. The space Yi Chen was in was completely submerged. From the outside, it was impossible to see Yi Chen's figure. What was going on? Look, the Yuan Qi there is exploding. A person pointed at the submerged sky and said with a dumbstruck expression. Everyone looked over and sucked in a breath of cold air. Black and red intertwined in the sky. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Wind and rain intertwined. Waves of fire soared into the sky. They were accompanied by beams of intense light. Purple, white, green, black, everything was there. It was unknown how many colors and how many kinds of Yuan Qi they contained. How can he survive like this? Nobody could imagine that the Darklight King's strength had reached such a level. A single palm strike had detonated a large area. I'm afraid this kid is done for. Someone sighed. Yeah, he's already strong enough. If the Darklight King doesn't reveal his trump cards, he won't be able to beat him. But he's still young and doesn't have a deep foundation. How can he compare to 100-year-old strongest half-step king like the Darklight King? Any one of his trump cards would be enough to dissolve his advantage and turn the tables. Ani, Yu Bingxin became anxious upon seeing the situation. Yu Lingshuang squinted her eyes and said solemnly, I can feel that his aura hasn't disappeared. Moreover, it's getting stronger. Aura getting stronger? Could it be that young Master Yi is preparing for a counterattack? Yu Lingshuang's words made Yu Bingxin sigh in relief. Perhaps. Yu Lingshuang didn't know either. Break! Yi Chen's voice was like a thunderclap from the 9 heavens. Nothing could isolate or weaken it. Following this shout, the sky that had been submerged started to churn violently, and the 5-colored radiance clapped against each other. It was as if the sky had truly turned into an ocean wave, a wave made of countless energies. Rip! In the next moment, a black sword light shot out, tearing apart the energy waves and tearing open a huge gap. Yi Chen's figure shot out from the gap and launched 49 sword strikes at the Darklight King. Each sword strike was fast to the extreme, golden cicada shedding. The Darklight King's expression turned gloomy. His body repeatedly turned, leaving behind vivid images. After 49 images, he suddenly pounced at Yi Chen. Along the way, he launched dozens of Darklight palm imprints. At this moment, he was prepared to go all out. Yi Chen's strength had far surpassed his expectations. He could actually break through his blazing earth and instantly counterattack. Because the distance was too far, Yi Chen's spiritual sword couldn't injure the Darklight King. However, it cleanly destroyed the latter's images. After 49 strikes, Yi Chen's aura turned sluggish. This was a sign that he had exhausted all his strength. Right at this moment, the Darklight King pounced at him. Even if his timing wasn't as good as Yi Chen's, it was still extremely frightening. He was worthy of being a veteran, strongest half-step king. Unfortunately, his opponent was Yi Chen, who had never been defeated in a battle of the same level as Yi Chen. Sword steps. Like a sword light, Yi Chen shuttled back and forth among the countless scorched palm imprints. His speed was like a flickering shadow, like a ray of sunlight. The Darklight King only saw a blur before Yi Chen arrived before him. As for his palm imprints, they were completely ineffective. How can he be so fast? The Darklight King's face turned pale with fright. In their first exchange, he had already sensed that Yi Chen's explosive power was very powerful. However, this time, the latter was much faster and craftier. Rather than calling it a movement art, it would be better to call it a sword art that used one's body as a sword. What the Darklight King didn't know was that Yi Chen's sword steps was a sword art intent. Sword arts were naturally extremely fast, and their trajectories were ever-changing. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that even Morong Qingqing, with her innate speed, was inferior to Yi Chen in short-range bursts. In fact, Yi Chen could be even faster. His green lotus sword arts had already been upgraded to a heaven-grade cultivation technique, which provided an inconceivable boost to his sword steps. After all, one was a sword artist's cultivation technique, while the other was a sword artist's sword steps. The two naturally complemented each other. As soon as he arrived, Yi Chen waved his sword at the Darklight King. This sword emitted a black sword chi that slashed at the Darklight King. The Darklight King's reaction was half a beat slower, but in this life and death crisis, he subconsciously used cicada shedding carapace, using his image to block Yi Chen's sword while his real body darted to the right. As a wily old fox, he didn't forget to turn around and launch an attack to prevent Yi Chen from approaching. Truly a wily old fox. Yi Chen didn't show any mercy. Up until now, apart from bewitching mirror shattering and sword domain, he had used almost all of his strength. If it were another strongest half-step king who had just stepped into the second layer of life and death chamber, they would have long since been defeated or even killed. However, the Darklight King was different. Not only was his cultivation base profound, but he also had countless trump cards, especially the cicada shedding carapace, which allowed him to evade Yi Chen's sure-kill attacks several times. Therefore, even if Yi Chen held the upper hand, he couldn't deal any substantial damage to the Darklight King. As for why he didn't use bewitching mirror shattering and sword domain, Yi Chen had the same thought as the Darklight King. With so many people present, revealing his trump cards was an extremely unwise choice. Bewitching mirror shattering contained space profound, while sword domain was a sword artist's domain. Neither could be casually used, unless no one was present or there was no other choice. However, I've already seen through the secret of cicada shedding carapace. After tangling for so long, Yi Chen had finally seen through the weakness of cicada shedding carapace, or rather, the weakness of Darklight King's golden dynasty shedding carapace. This time, the Darklight King couldn't escape this calamity. Damn it! Do I have to use the third style of Darklight palm arts? Pulling open the distance, the Dark Light King revealed a hesitant expression. Although he could summon the wind and summon the rain in Gemstone Islands, this was because he had never revealed his strongest trump cards. Others couldn't see through him, but once he did, he would lose all his secrets. This was an extremely dangerous situation. In a confrontation between experts, strength was not the most important factor, but the element of surprise. In Gemstone Islands, there were two strongest half-step kings. One was him, and the other was Huang Mei. He was sure that once he used the third style of Darklight palm arts, Huang Mei would study it for a long time. The next time he fought with her, he would undoubtedly suffer a great loss. Forget it. If I don't use the third style, I can't take down this kid today. Future matters can be left for later. His mind turning at lightning speed. The Darklight King quickly made up his mind. With this palm, you'll die without a doubt. Coldly looking at Yi Qin, the Darklight King seemed as if he was looking at a dead man. He had no doubt that Yi Qian would die under this palm without any suspense. This was because even he himself hadn't fully grasped this palm. Once he used it, he couldn't control it and could only allow it to continue. Bring it on. Yi Chen was somewhat flabbergasted. Darklight King's expression told him that the opponent's next move would be no small matter. However, he didn't feel the slightest bit of fear. On the contrary, he was somewhat expectant. He wanted to see just how profound Darklight King's ultimate trump card was. One had to know that apart from bewitching mirror shattering and sword domain, he hadn't used Waning Moon to its full power. This was because the evil shattering sword consumed too much Xinyuan. Apart from spiritual sword, all of his other moves would consume at least 10 to 20% of his Xinyuan. He couldn't use them more than a few times. Letting out a breath, the steward revealed a smile and said in a relaxed tone, "It's over." "Steward, how did you know?" A half-step king of glorious exchanges asked. The steward said mysteriously, "Just wait and see. This kid's chance of survival is 0. Buzz. The silver moon Arctic fox phantom appeared behind Yuling Shuang. She could sense that Yi Chen was truly in danger this time. His life might be in danger, and if she didn't make preparations, she wouldn't be able to save him in time. That old geezer even created the third style. Huang Mei's brows creased. The last time she exchanged blows with the Darklight King was 10 years ago. At that time he had only created 2 styles, and the third was Distant Shadow.